just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Bloke in a Bar, the last episode of the year. What a year it's been. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone that has listened. It's been a gigantic year. The podcast has grown tremendously, and that's all thanks to you guys. All thanks to you guys. As usual, brought to you by Bloke Beer. Get into your local, grab a case of Bloke Beer. It's Chrissy Break. It's Chrissy Break. It's the perfect beer for Chrissy Break because it's a session beer. Have 3 or 4, easy drinking, not fruity, not hoppy. Beer that tastes like real beer. And also right now, literally right now, in celebrations across the entirety of New South Wales, it's currently on promotion. So if you go into celebrations, you'll get a discount across all of New South Wales. So get down your local celebrations, grab a case of Bloke Beer. We're also in Bottle all across New South Wales ACT. We're also in Porter's Liquor, IGA Plus Liquor. Plus, we're in every single Celebration Superstore in Queensland, plus hundreds of other stores in Queensland. Got a bunch of messages on the weekend saying how much they love the beer, guys. So please go out, grab a case of beer. If you enjoyed the show over the past year and you've enjoyed hours and hours and hours of content, you drink beer, grab a case of Bloke Beer. Or if you don't drink beer, we've got plenty of merch on the website. We've got party shirts, singlets, boardies, thongs, everything. So make sure to grab one. Perfect Chrissy present, even a late Chrissy present. Bloke.shop, or we go use our store locator for the beer on blokeinabar.com. Put in your postcode. It'll show you the nearest stockist. I've got the great Gurino here, mate. How was your weekend?
It was good, mate. We had early Christmas yesterday. I actually got the father-in-law on Bloke. Loves it now.
Oh, really?
He's converted, I think.
Yeah.
So, also, mate, I was going to mention to you last week, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, Arvo. I was driving home and the sun was setting in front of me and there was a lone figure jogging towards me.
Oh, yeah.
In his Bloke singlet,
Yep.
waving to the crowd. It was like a scene out of fucking Rocky Balboa. It was unreal. You're moving.
That's where, mate. That's the mindset I was in, the Rocky mindset. It's a hot boy summer, Guru. I'm trying to get hot.
You certainly were.
Mate, I'm trying to get hot. The reason why I got the singlet out is because I'm trying to get rid of the shirt tan, mate. But yeah, look, was I moving it? I was moving at a bit of a clip. Timmy, what about you? You doing any? Is it a hot boy summer for Timmy?
Always hot boy summer, mate. Yeah, can't wait to get the lid off down at the beach this season. So it's I absolutely love it. Great time of year. Early disclaimer: I'm a little bit weary for this podcast, not because it's been such a long year. It's been a great year, fresh enough from that. But I was up for that bloody game of soccer this morning. Up at all hours. That felt like it went for about 18 hours, that game. And it's, I mean, if you look past the fact that they get clipped in the ear and get stretched it and never come back, it's like, it's not a bad game at times, soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. So it was a long game, but glad I got up for it and good to see Messi get the accolades he deserves, mate, the big fella.
World Cup final. First Argentinian to win since Maradona. It's poetic. It's not almost poetic. It is poetic that the Messi, one of the GOATs, gets the World Cup win. Some are saying it's one of the best World Cup grand finals we've ever seen. Obviously, they go 2-0 up. Then Mbappe, the next GOAT, at the moment anyway, scores a hat-trick. Like, incredible scenes. Then they win on penalties. Yeah, mate, what an incredible... We'll ask you boys, we don't know that much about soccer or football, but does that confirm Messi is the GOAT compared to Ronaldo?
I know less about football than you two. I know nothing about it, but I was saying, mate, this morning, how amazing is it that, we get to see Messi, Brady, the Williams sisters, Tiger Woods, like in our life. We could have seen 4 or 5 GOATs across 4 or 5 sports. It's, and then in our own little backyard, we get to see Joey and Cam Smith. It's a pretty special time.
Absolutely. What do you reckon?
Yeah, mate, I could sit here for the next 4 hours and talk about Messi being the GOAT ahead of Ronaldo, and there'll be blow-ups galore, but 2 World Cup finals for him now. He's now won one of them. He's won a Copa America, the South American League there. He got player of the tournament in that. Player of the tournament this World Cup was about 2 minutes off getting the golden boot for top goal scorer as well. So the bloke's done now everything in the game, I think. So pretty hard to argue with him.
The argument that he didn't play in the Premier League, that's arguably the toughest comp, does that lean more in Ronaldo's favour?
Oh, look, it certainly contributes, but at the same time, like people say, Messi had it cruisy at Barcelona, been in the best team in the world for so long. It's like Barcelona signed him like 12 years old and he went there from that point. It's like he went there, that was his home at his club because he was there for such a long time. You would have loved to see him instead of go to maybe PSG where he won a title there last season in France, go to the EPL and try and win it there. But for everything he's achieved across, winning numerous Champions Leagues, now international titles which elude him for a long time, it's like Sure, an EPL title would have been great, but even when you're talking about Ronaldo, as good as that bloke is and what he did at Manchester United, the team he had there was like unbelievable.
Yeah,
so I'm like, mate, I'm Team Messi every day of the week.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a period where Barcelona was the top dogs, and then Real Madrid became the top dogs. And I'm not sure if it coincides, but doesn't it coincide Barcelona's re-emergence of dominance over Real for a period with Messi coming of age?
Oh, pretty well, mate. Like them two just went toe and toe for so many years, Real and Barca. And then the second that Messi leaves Barcelona, they've struggled the last couple of seasons. So that obviously says a fair bit about it as well. And no knock on Ronaldo. There's no reason why we can't enjoy these two absolute legends of the game simultaneously. So yeah.
Got to see it in El Clasico when I was over in Europe.
Yeah, that would have been sick.
Real Madrid versus Barca. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. But let's get to the bloody rugby league, mate. Fucking hell. But first, brought to you by Milwaukee. It's almost Chrissy time, and you may be getting ready to have some people over for the holidays. You want to tidy up, especially outdoors, so go straight for Milwaukee Tools. The outdoor equipment range is incredibly reliable and doesn't even use petrol, which is so convenient. No more petrol headaches. Milwaukee Outdoor Power Equipment gives you the power to clear, cut, and maintain the outdoors. Get down if you need some tools. Milwaukee Tools is the place to go, guys. They've got a bunch of different, a huge range of tools, and they're high quality and reliable. Support them because they support us, guys. Milwaukee Tools. Head to their website to find out where you can grab some Milwaukee Tools. And as tradies will know that have used them before, Milwaukee Tools are high quality, some of the best in the business. So give her a crack. But let's get into the latest breaking news. Breaking news, Dylan Brown has re-signed on a 9-year deal. Now, it's a bit of a strange one. He's signed at the least until 2025 with options, we think, in his favour until up to 2031. Now, I think that this is a really interesting deal because usually if you get what you want, you're not going to want to sign a 10-year deal. You're going to say, well, look, let's just make he's, I think, on the open market right now due to his age rather than due to his achievements. But due to his achievements because he made grand final, whatever. But due to his age, I would land him around the 750 to 800K mark. Like, if he was this player now when he was like 27, then maybe I'd put him down at 650 to 7. But I think with his potential being like 22 years old or so, with how long he can be playing footy and improve, I'd put him around the 800K mark. But I think, let's say they gave him and offered him a 5-year deal worth 800K a year, you'd probably just take that because you'd expect or you'd hope that in 5 years' time you're going to be worth 1.2 million. So I think this deal is a good indication that they've probably got him for unders, and it's timed with Mitchell Moses hitting the ages of around 31, 32 years old. It'll be 2025 when these options kick in, and maybe the Eels are banking on developing Brown into becoming their main guy. And then once Mitchell Moses obviously either retires or gets a reduction in his contract, Dylan Brown then takes up the majority of the cap. But I want to get your thoughts first, guys, on the deal. Gurino, thoughts?
Yeah, I love the timing, as you said. I think this indicates they're either super confident or they are going to keep Mitch Moses for the next few years. And as you said, mate, I think a lot of it comes down to that timing of 2025. Hopefully when Brown comes off by then, if they need to find another halfback, he'll be a guy that halfbacks will take less to play alongside. For example, if you had the opportunity to play with Cam Munster, you might take a little bit less as a 7. So I love it, mate. And we've been harping on about Dylan Brown for so long on this podcast, so long. And even when he wasn't getting all the stats and everything last year, we backed him in. So it's great to see him not only have the season that he had, but then to sign a big contract like this. Great to see the player option. It's going to be interesting.
Really interesting because player options can turn into a disaster. Let's say he doesn't kick on to be the player we know he can be. All of a sudden, you've got this kid. If it is a player option, it hasn't been that clear, but I feel like if it wasn't a player option, the club would say that because that's a better yarn to spin of it's a 9-year deal, but we're the ones that execute it. So it's one of those really interesting ones where masterstroke or massive fucking migraine.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, unfortunately, Parramatta, they do create a lot of headlines. We could be sitting here for 6 years straight.
Yeah. Is he going to take his option? Look at the Caleb Ponga situation. It was a fucking... Timmy, what do you reckon about this deal?
Yeah, I think first things first, I'm stoked to see him stay at the club and lock it in long term. It's such a great win for Parramatta because I think Dylan Brown, both on and off the field, is a bloke you can build your club around for many years. So just such a key piece of the puzzle for the Eels. Around the deal, and I'll get your thoughts on it. This is just very speculative, could be talking out my arse, but with the player option for that long, like the NRL is in a really good place at the moment. It's growing. Do you think that's Dylan Brown going, all right, sweet, I'll lock in my $800K a year, whatever it might be, for the next 3 years? But if the salary cap, which it's likely to do over time, gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the game continues to grow, in 5 years' time, if he's one of the best players in the NRL, maybe he becomes worth $1.3 million if the salary cap's at $12 million or $13 million and just gets bigger and bigger. So do you think it's him basically saying, in the event that it does continue to grow, well, my worth might go up substantially, like anyone's would?
Yeah, for sure. I think he's actually probably on less. That first 3 years, I reckon. Look, I've got no evidence for this, but it just seems like with that big of an option at the back end of a contract, we talk about back end of contracts. People aren't biggest fans of them, but I think he's probably re-signed for like $500-600K for the next 3 years. It's gonna, again, that's just a pure assumption. But if he was on $800K, as you said, you'd go, well, mate, just take for example, let's say that the club offered him $800K for the next 3 years. Why would they offer him that massive player option for the next till 2031? They're offering too much. The only reason I can see the club reason for offering the massive player option is because he's on unders for the next 3 years. Yep. But you're right, though, like Dylan Brown's probably sitting there going, well, in his situation, he might be worth $1.2 million. It's going to be interesting to see whether those player options are like percentage connected to the cap, similar to what
it'd nearly have to be, wouldn't it? That'd make more sense.
Maybe, or maybe they said to him like, look, you're on $500-600K for the next 3 years, and then you're on $800K for 9 years, and maybe Dylan Brown's gone, you know what? At the very least, $800K for 10 years of my life.
Not bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad. Maybe, and also it's a player option, so I can just choose not to take it. So maybe it's a real meeting in the middle kind of thing, like of, look, mate, if we want to keep Mitchell Moses, you cannot be. We spoke about this 2 weeks ago. In no world can they both be on $1 million. It just cannot happen. And so I think they've probably said to Dill, look, do you want to win comps in the next 3 years? The only way you're going to do that if Mitchell Moses is here. There is no one on the market, no one we can afford that we're going to be able to bring here in with you. So, yeah, look, I think it's really good evidence as well of like, as I said, meeting in the middle. Like it's because it seems like a bizarre deal, but when you stop and you go, okay, well, they could win a comp in the next 3 years. Yes, they lost Reid Marnie. Yes, they lost Papali'i, but they still have an incredible roster.
Yeah, and I also wouldn't sleep on just the fact that last year was the first time Parramatta got themselves all the way to a grand final. Like their spine's going to take so much confidence and experience out of that as well. So I like the way that Parramatta's played this. If they've managed to get all the way to the grand final and then somehow keep Brown and Moses off the back of that, when you've got the Dolphins sitting up there with all the coin in the world ready to take these guys, I think they've done incredibly well.
Yeah, I think it's a great deal. And look, the player option's interesting. I wonder if it's year on year or if it's like you have to fucking execute a 6-year deal. It's probably, what do you reckon, year on year?
I would think so.
Surely.
I think it must be.
Because, like, why would he want to execute a 6-year deal? Because if he executes a 6-year deal, it could be bad for both parties then. Yeah. But in saying that, maybe that's what they needed to get him across the line. It's like a 6-year deal, $800K a year deal kind of thing. And he's gone, well, I'll make that call when I get there. Because a player option year on year is like, that's tough on the Eels cap because you just don't know. Maybe it's like every 2 years or something.
Yeah, that would make more sense, I think.
Every 2 years, player option.
Yeah.
In Brown's favour.
I mean, like when you have a look at the end of 2025, I think it's fair to assume that might be the end of Mitch Moses' career. By that point, he's 28. Maybe not the end, but it might be.
A reduction in he's not going to be on $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be.
He might be. Yeah, he might be. If Mitch Moses isn't there, do we see Dill Brown at the end of 2025? Do we think he could develop into a halfback, or do you think he's always going to be more of a 6?
I don't think so. I mean, look, he's got the skill set, I guess, but he is literally made to be a running 6, like a running ball playing 6. He might be, but I don't know. Would you be taking away? Look, the game might have changed by then as well, where you've just got to, like, for example, you look at a Jerome Hughes and you would say, he's not going to be a 7. Like, he's a running 6. He's a fullback.
Yep.
So maybe, I mean, he is a smaller body than Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown's quite a big body. Yeah, really interesting.
I think Brown could transfer is the word I'm looking for, into a halfback, an organised halfback. I think of like Kieran Foran or even probably Sean Johnson's a good example. These blokes who early in their career were ball running 5'8", and by the end of it, you know, as Father Time catches up with anyone, they lose an ounce of speed or strength and they evolve into the organising halfback. And I think Brown can do that.
I think his ball skills are definitely good enough to do that. It's just going to be interesting, you know, with the character that he is, where he's kind of the rogue and just likes to play not off the cuff, but I wonder if, you know, mentally he would enjoy being the 7.
And I think that's the other side of it too, that, you know, with Gutho and Moses in this team, you haven't really seen him given the opportunity to be that guy either.
Yeah, even when there was a chance for him to do that, they brought on Jake Arthur and put him there instead of putting Brown there. We were all like, what the hell's going on there? Like, put Brown there and put Arthur at 6 because Brown's got the experience and he's you know, been in the game. That's another thing. Like, maybe they're banking on some of their younger 7s as well to come through at that 2025 period if Moses doesn't continue playing great footy.
Yeah, they have got some really good young halves at the club too.
I tell you what would be really interesting is if Moses' contract ends on the 2025 as well. That will give you a really good indication as to what this deal represents.
Yeah.
If Moses' deal ends 2 years after it, then that'll be very strange. If it ends a year before, that'll be very strange. But I'd say a 3-year deal for Moses is probably where you want to land, surely. So what we got? Yeah, it'll be a 3-year deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, at the end of 2025, you're going to have Brown. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? You're going to be juggling with the Mitch Moses situation. Josh Hodgson, he's not going to play forever too in the next year, 18 months, whatever it might be. They're going to need a 9 too. So it's going to be a lot of disruption there that they're going to have to deal with.
Or maybe they go like, you know, Moses 2026 or something, just to give them that extra year of like certainty.
This won't be a shock, but the NRL.com have just confirmed it's a player option till 2031.
So it is a player option
Yep.
till 20. I wonder whether it's year on year. I'd love to know the details of that. But the only thing logically in my mind that makes sense is the reason for this massive option is the unders at the start. Otherwise, if you're the Eels, why you're better off offering him overs for 3 years than just a massive fucking 9-year deal, like, because he's done some great things so far, but he hasn't won comps, he hasn't done all that kind of stuff. But it's a great deal. It's a great deal, and if I'm gonna right now. Happy to be wrong. I think this confirms that Moses will stay.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident he'll stay. Yeah.
Because like, if you're Dylan Brown, why would you have 9-year deal options unless you're confident that the club going forward is going to have a gun, at least for the next few years, a plan going forward? Because like, let's say he signs that 3-year deal and Moses leaves. I can't see him staying after the 3 years because like, who do they get to replace him? They could fall off a cliff with Moses leaving.
Yeah. Which once again, and we'll talk about them later today, I'm looking around the Dolphins situation going, fuck, what's going to happen?
Jesus.
I tell you what, like, if I'm a Dolphins fan, and we'll get to it, but Katoa, the pressure on that young fella is psycho. Like, not that it shouldn't be, and he shouldn't be even thinking about that shit, Katoa. Yeah. But from a fan's perspective, he is your guy. Like, I know they've got Sean O'Sullivan and Anthony Milford, but you know, like if you want to play top 8 footy, and maybe Sean O'Sullivan will develop into that player, like players develop much later. But Katoa is your next superstar coming through.
And yeah, I'll be interested to hear what you guys think. Like, I'm a huge fan of him, been talking about him for a couple of years now. I don't think I'd start with him round 1.
Katoa?
Yeah, I really
don't.
Yeah,
no, I don't think so either.
And I'm not sure when
Wayne's usually really patient with stuff like that. Anyway, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, great signing for Dylan Brown. And just take a step back to think of this kid's story. Sent over to Australia when he was 15, 16 years old by himself. Didn't want to leave home, but his parents said to him, you got to go. You got to go. And it's often overlooked, these sacrifices. Like, imagine if you were 15 or 16, had to go to a whole new country, and I think he's from the north of New Zealand, so I think he was living there. So it's not like he went from like Auckland City to Sydney City. This is essentially a country lad rolling into the west of Sydney, had the back issues early on, had that huge offer from the Warriors, declined it, came in, played really well. Second year, people all thought second year syndrome. I didn't think so. I thought he had a solid year. Then he has bounced back. Like, it's an incredible story of a young man risking so much and sacrificing so much, like to not be around your family as a 15, 16-year-old. It's incredible.
I think like we also, when we talk about Dylan Brown, we quite often use the word, the rogue because of the way he plays his footy. Like he's a perfect sort of billboard guy for the next few years. Yeah. And I think that, we use the word rogue about the way he plays his footy and people think that about his character as well. But, he's starting his own clothing label. And
he is a sweet guy.
Yeah.
A sweet young man. He's very nice and kind of gentle.
I think he's a little bit misunderstood.
Yeah, for sure.
By a lot of people.
For sure. I was just talking to him the other day. Like, he's a very, he's not the roguelike Munster. He's I'm trying to compare to a guy in the past. It's just laid back, cool, calm, collected, but also has a bit about him. He'd be probably more in the Kalen Ponga, I guess, mould in regards to personality. He started We the North is a great brand that he started, a clothing brand. Just incredible.
I think he's also as I said, we always talk about him as, the rogue footballer who does this, does that. He's also just one of the best defensive halves, if not the best defensive half in the competition. And for me, that matters a fucking heap.
Well, Liam Martin was ripping his shoulder off in that grand final. And even though Liam Martin would get quick to play the balls, he was still hanging on for dear life. Honestly, nearly any other six in the comp is getting at least 2 tries scored against him because they were just absolutely pounding his edge.
He's almost at the point where if I'm Parramatta and I want him to be there for the next 8 or 10 years, I'm almost sort of saying to him, maybe you need to take less of these shit hit-ups you're constantly taking. Because, and it's great. He's one of those guys that, if I've got the ball and Tim's not in a better position than me and I'm Dylan Brown, I'll just go. I'll just get whacked and I'll take it, which is a great part of your character, but I think it is something that they need to monitor if they want to have him for an extended period as well.
Yeah, got to make sure his body is treated, because he's almost a Ferrari. He's 6'2", great physique. Apparently, does really well in fitness. He's obviously he's one of the most underrated speed-wise players in the comp. He's fast.
There was one that springs to mind. I'm pretty sure it was 2 seasons back. He ran someone down Storm.
In the corner?
Yeah. And he was just flying.
Yeah.
And that was the moment you sort of sat back and went, holy shit, he can run.
And there's been so many situations where, other teams are scoring tries and Dylan Brown comes from the other side. He doesn't make the tackle.
Yeah.
But he gets within 2 or 3 metres. And when you watch on the wider street, you go, how the fuck did he get there? Why was he there?
Yeah. And that's the thing, you usually don't, the rogue isn't the guy that's chasing those kind of this, that, and the next thing. So, that was a tackle against Olam. The game was done. They were behind by 12 to 16, and he comes across, as in Storm were up. So he came from the other side of the field, chops Olam, who is obviously not easy to tackle. He's a super athlete. He really, you can tell by his physique, you can tell by the way, just the way he is balanced, the way he moves. In my experience, you can usually tell by the physique of someone, usually, whether they're a super athlete, and I think he's one of them for sure. I think he could have played multiple sports for sure.
And you look at the flow and effects of this, and again, a little speculative, but all right, if this does mean Mitch Moses, as we're sort of predicting, does hang around at the Eels for a few more years, there's that bit of chat that Bateman to the Tigers has been held up because of the Tigers' pursuit of Mitchy Moses, reportedly. So if this does lock in Moses to the Eels, do we see Bateman to the Tigers now?
Oh, for Tigers fans, it changes everything for the Tigers, in my opinion, because he's that guy that can just the mongrel in a team that everyone gets around and gets behind and goes forward. That's where I wish we had this kind of transfer time or period or whatever, because there would be more chat for the casual fan. A lot of people listening right now, you don't have the time to sit there and go through a fucking squad. So you listen to the podcast and you go, oh shit, this happened or that happened or this is going to happen. Whereas if we had transfer windows and stuff, all of this would be laid out in a clear path for if Moses re-signs with the Eels, this actually opens up cap space for, this team. And then if this player leaves here, it actually creates a musical chairs between. Whereas that's what AFL do really well. It's all laid out clear for you if you want it there. The information is there where you can see people moving the pieces of the puzzle the pieces on the chessboard. So, yeah, great sign. Great sign for the Eels. And just a congratulations to the club. Like, this club was a basket case 5 years ago. Honestly, it was an absolute schmozzle. And to think that it's just clawed its way out, not easily either. It's like they're in that kind of it's almost like the Goldilocks zone where you're close to a premiership, but they can't really go into the market or to their current players and say, if you stay here, you win comps. Whereas you go to Penrith, you go to the Storm, you go to the Roosters, that's one of their biggest weapons is if you stay here for at least 3 or 4 years, there's a good chance you'll win a comp. And so teams like the Eels, usually they just get constantly raided by the lower tier teams because then they're in this Goldilocks zone for recruitment. If you're, a Broncos, if you're a Tigers, or if you're on the edge of the 8, or even if you're, let's say you're the Sharks or the Cowboys, like you could raid the Eels if you wanted because you could say, look, we're almost just as close as you winning a comp. Plus, we can offer you more because our roster's not... I mean, I know it's stacked now, but it's not as stacked. So, congratulations to the Eels as a club. Congratulations to Dylan. An absolute legend of a young bloke. Like, seriously, legend of a guy. Super nice. And just a great player to watch play footy. Exciting. Highlight reels. Does the tough stuff. And he's hot. Like, he's fucking hot. Like, that's what matters in rugby league. Now, let's get into part 2 of roster review. We'll get the Roosters first. Really, really interesting, the Roosters, because when you sit down and you look at this roster, it's like every year you go, holy shit, what is doing? How do they manage to keep all these players plus recruit? I look at this roster and anything less than a grand final is a disappointment, in my opinion. Guys, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think they're right up there with Penrith as far as their squad goes. I think, we've spoken about it a little bit over the last few weeks. Brandon Smith coming in to play 9. I think that'll be interesting. I think it'll probably take a few weeks before it all gels. I've sort of got this looking like a bit of a 2018 season where I think it might be a bit clunky to start. I think once they're all, used to cheese at 9 and they've got Manu's, position sorted and Teddy, how they're going to float between each other, I think they're going to be a serious threat. The thing that I love to start this year is that there's no question marks over the halves. You know who's going to be the 7, you know who's going to be the 6. It's exciting.
It is exciting. It is exciting for sure. Timmy, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm so excited to watch the Roosters play this season. And Guru touched on it there with the halves. And it took time for Sammy Walker and Luke Keary in their first full season together to gel. And they got there by the back end of the year and were cut short in that semi-final. But with the year together, Sammy Walker getting better and better and better, I don't think the Roosters can definitely win the comp. I'm probably tipping them at this stage. They really do need some luck with injuries because they've had a tough run the last 2 or 3 years where they've had small premiership windows, and I really do think injuries have cut down their chances big time. So they have depth in every position. Not just do they have depth, but they've got international quality depth in every position. Yeah. They could put together an exceptional season in 2023.
Do we think, and this is me being glass half empty, do we think it's becoming a concern that essentially since the back-to-back grand finals, so back-to-back grand final wins, I think they've hovered around 4th to 6th, if I recall correctly. Could you get up since... So basically, and I also think they've bounced out of by second week. They haven't made a prelim since the grand final. Is it a concern that it's becoming a bit of a trend that they seem to be still struggling to find their mojo until the end of the year? Or do you believe it's more in the mould of a Wayne Bennett where they time their run perfectly? Just
quickly. So, they went premiers, and then they went week 2, and then last year got bounced out week 1.
I think it once again shows how good Cronk was. I mean, we all talk about, I hear a lot of people say, he was at a good team in Melbourne, he went to the other gun team, he was only at the good teams. It's like, okay, yeah, right. Fucking hectic team hasn't made a grand final or a prelim since he left. Shocked me.
Yep.
I look at this Roosters side over the last few years, and I think that we just need to keep in mind that, one, they did lose Cooper Cronk. We know what it's like when you've seen teams lose some of the greatest of all time.
Yep.
They've got guns everywhere, there's no doubt about it. But, they went through a season of having Kyle Flanagan as a 7. He was going to be the future. Moved off him. Had different plans. All the injuries. COVID happened. All of a sudden, this teenager from Queensland comes in. Now he's going to be the guy. They then spent another year trying to get Keary back into bed. There's been a lot of things to work out. In the midst of that, the hookers have changed a heap. And then in the midst of that, you've also had trying to fit Joey Manu into this fullback sort of role. I'm not concerned about it. I just sort of think that over the last few years, this year will sort of be the apex where it all comes together.
So do you feel, Timmy, or what are your thoughts, Timmy?
Yeah, I know you can't blame everything on injuries, but I really do think it's cooled them. So, I mean, last season, we spoke about how, a new look spine was going to take time for them to click into gear, and they did. They ended up winning. Was it something like 8 on the trot to finish the season?
They looked incredible.
Yeah, they looked incredible, and you're sitting there going, all right, they're outside the top 4, but they can win the comp. They went to that semi-final, and they lost Teddy, Crichton, Tupu within 20 or 30 minutes. There was sin bins galore, and they fell flat on face. It was carnage. So I really do think they were in a position to go deep last year. Didn't help them. The year before that was when they lost Kiri to his ACL. They had injury crisis. So I think you can excuse that, and they still made second week of finals despite that. Sammy Walker came in his first year in the NRL. The year before that, they second week of finals as well. I can't remember, but I feel like there was some decent injuries in there as well. So I think they've got legitimate excuses the last couple of years, and there's no reason why, if they stay fit, they can't go all the way in 23.
Have we been witnessing almost a rebuild to a degree? And again, I know the rebuild's got this really bad word to it where you associate that with the clubs at the bottom of the table. But do you think that's internally maybe what Trent has been trying to do is rebuild since losing a guy like Cooper Cronk?
Potentially. I don't know if I would call it a rebuild.
And Boyd Cordner and that.
Yeah.
Because when you think of it, they've lost Brett Morris, Josh Morris, Boyd Cordner, Mitch Orbison, Jake Friend, Cooper Cronk. I actually think internally they would be calling it a bit of a rebuild. Not in the negative sense. We're talking Storm Roosters rebuild. Because look how much they've rotated their 7 massively. So much so they lost Flanagan. They put Walker there. Then they moved Walker from there. They moved Walker back with putting Kiri there, obviously. They had Jake Friend. Then they put Verrills there. Then they put... they've rotated their 9 at least 3 or 4 times in the last... You know what I mean? Even their edges, they put Crichton as a starter. They put Satilli as a starter. Then Butcher was there for a bit.
Even those players, Verrills had a couple of long-term injuries. Pretty sure Kiri did his ACL.
Yeah.
So, in those key positions as well,
Joey
they've been
Manu,
rotating because of that.
Fractured cheekbone back into the season.
And there's always been guys like Adam Kieran or Drew Hutchison that have come in and played fucking everything.
Yeah.
I think the other one that we, and I know that no one at this panel sleeps on him, but, they won those 2 comps. Victor Radley played 46 games in those 2 years.
Yeah.
Since then, he's played 39.
Wow. Yeah.
Over the last 3 years. So he is... I know that, Isaiah Yeo, I consider him to be the best 13 in the competition, but the 13 with the most upside is Victor Radley. And I think he is so fucking important to this team. It's not even funny. I've said it a number of times. You go back to 2018, everyone says, it changed when Cronk and Teddy got used to each other. Fucking changed when they put Radley in 13.
With Radley, he's such an interesting case, and I'm going to get booed off stage here. I'm going to get booed off stage, but I want him to be less aggressive. Because I just can't see how he could do that for the next 10 years. And he's so silky with his hands. And also, I know people don't agree with this as well. I still think he's the best ball-playing 13. People think that it's Isaiah Yeo. People think it's Cam Murray. Again, I'm not saying he's the best 13. I just think his ball-playing is the best. I think Isaiah Yeo at the moment is the best 13 in the comp. I think it's interchangeable with Cam Murray, to be honest. But back-to-back 13 that win a premiership, you've got to put him at number 1. But Victor Radley, I agree with you. He is vital to that team. So vital, it's crazy. Some of the way he throws his body, he doesn't try and shot wide running forwards, outside backs. He picks out the biggest bloke that you shouldn't try to shot because it's dangerous for yourself and tries it. And that's where I'm like, you're so crucial to this team. I just chill, bruh, a little bit.
And he's 24 years old. It's fucking outrageous.
Yeah.
He'd won 2 comps by the time he was 21.
I know.
And once again, I think people forget, we talk about Isaiah Yeo, how important he is to the Panthers. Radley was as important to this Roosters side back then, without a doubt. So I agree with you, mate. He might be the toughest motherfucker on the field, but he's also one of the most skillful, and you need him on the field.
I know, you need him on the field, and no one loves seeing Victor Radley firing up more than me. I fucking love it. It is rugby league. It's the purest form of it, in the middle at least. But it's it's just, I want to see him on the field as much as possible. What do you reckon, Timmy? Am I going to get booed off stage or what?
Oh, absolutely will. But no, you speak about all these players. We chatted about Kalen Ponga last week, the week before, about him and, preserving yourself. It's all good and well to belt the shit out of the biggest bloke on the field, and we love to see it. But as Guru mentioned the numbers there before, he's missed a lot of action, be it through going too hard and having an arm slip up and get suspended or injuring himself. And at some point, something's got to give in this game. And if you want a long career, you've got to have some sort of preservation, self-preservation.
He has zero.
And Victor, you're right. He absolutely needs some self-preservation. And it's easy for Trent Robbo to go public and say, "No, keep playing your same game, go hard." But internally in his mind, he's surely going, "Mate, just take it easy. We need you on the field.
Wrap the ball up, win the wrestle." It's such an interesting one because you don't want to lose the warrior spirit, and that's like something that Robinson seems to really push to the players is this kind of like warrior Spartan mentality of like we are warriors on that field. You don't want to lose that. I remember actually Wayne pulled Carmichael Hunt aside when we were coming through, and this is when he was literally catching the ball and just running it straight. And I'd never seen a fullback do that where he was literally 20 metres back and just going at whoever he wanted. And Wayne basically said, "Mate, if you do this, you'll be playing for about 3 years and you'll be gonskis." And I'm not saying it's the exact same as the Victor Radley thing, it's a different position, but it's because I'm such a fan of Radley and what he brings to this game that I'm like, I want him to be playing as much footy as possible and for as long as possible, because if the Roosters want to win a comp, in my opinion, he needs to be on the field. He needs to be on the field for as much as possible.
And like, if I was Trent Robinson, I'd be sitting down with Radley and saying, "You're 24, you've won 2 comps. If you sort it out, you'll be at this club for your entire career."
Yep.
He could finish with 4 or 5 prems.
100% he could. And he's already come out and basically, his manager, and Politis has confirmed it, he said, "I don't even want to go to market, I want to re-sign." Which is like, fuck, music to your ears as a Roosters fan. The coin he could get at another club, and even just the media circus that would happen if he did go on the market, because he is so loved by the fans. It's such a, I know people make jokes about the Roosters, and I get it. Like, sometimes I'm like, how? But you cannot deny that this club and some of the loyalty the players have to it, like Angus Crichton, like Victor Radley, is absolutely incredible. Like, the system they've got set up there, all built on the back of, like, maybe it was before it, but just in my time watching the game, the guys like Freddie, Craig Fitzgibbon, Minicello, like all those boys built this incredible culture. They pass it on to Boyd Cordner, Mitchell Orbison, Jake Friend, and then they have passed it on to the next generation. They have handled the passing on of culture as good as the Melbourne Storm probably as good as the Melbourne Storm. Whereas, like, and I'd hate to put the boot into my old club, but I feel like that's something the Broncos really stuffed up. Like, the culture pass on just didn't seem to happen. There was too much turmoil up top and all that kind of stuff for that to happen. Whereas the Roosters have done it incredibly.
And mate, like, obviously I see a little bit more of it with my brother being in this junior system. Like, there is Orbo, there is Friendy, there is Mini, there is Cordner, there is all these guys that they are seeing regularly, that they're in regular contact with. And out of those 45 kids in that squad, 3 will probably play first grade.
Yeah.
But they're going to have that inbuilt in them. Mitchell Pearce came back a few weeks ago from France, and he spent a whole day with them in at the system, talking to them about what it means to be a Rooster, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this is a guy, Mitchell Pearce, if he never wanted to set foot in a Roosters room again, you could understand.
100% he could.
But he's the first one to come back and talk so highly of the club and what they do. And, you got Mitchell Pearce followed by Boyd Cordner. We spoke about this a while ago. Every single kid coming through that system has probably a top 5 player in their position over the last 15 years hanging around training.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You look at just about every club in the NRL, there's always this news of players wanting to get out of the club, in a turmoil somewhere. Just about every single club, I feel like you never see a player wanting out of the Roosters, because they're unhappy for whatever reason.
It's a great point. It's a great point because, like, even the Munster circus at the Storm, like, have we really seen that at the Roosters recently? And maybe we're all misremembering. I'm sure someone will remember, but is there anyone that we've really seen that's been that the Roosters? Maybe Latrell situation, but he actually wanted to play fullback, and that all happened pretty quickly. That Roosters kind of made their decision quickly.
Name another club where their best front row forward, in my opinion, Matt Lodge, would be put on a train and trial and no one talks about it.
Yeah, I know. Craziness.
What about Angus Crichton? We waited 2 years to find out what he was doing. No stress whatsoever.
No,
Didn't hear a thing.
Didn't hear a thing.
Nothing gets out.
And there was no, like it's almost like a game of chicken in most other clubs of like, are you trying to screw me? Am I trying to screw you? Like, what's happening? Whereas just this trust between... Yeah. And I know a lot of people will go, well, of course they are. They're all getting money under the table. They just, come on. Like, you can't get so much, like, what do you think? They're giving all that money to every single player that's ever, like, come on. Like, that would get caught eventually. It's about exactly what you said. There's 45 young players. Most of them absolutely will not make it. Like, the likelihood is one. One of them will make that Roosters side and stay there for a long time. But that's where it begins. It begins with Mitchell Pearce, Boyd Cordner, Jake Friend, Mitchell Orbison, going down to those young fellows and saying, this is what it means to be a Rooster, creating that community, family kind of culture. That's how you keep players down the track. I remember when Victor Radley signed his last contract, this was years and years ago, I had them on the podcast, and I said, this is killing it. I think he just won a comp. Young fella, and I said, did you consider going anywhere else? And he just goes, why would I? Like, I get to live in eastern suburbs and I get to play for the Roosters. Like, who cares about like money at this stage of my life? And I was like, fuck, so hectic.
There was Matt King said once when he was an assistant coach or one of the coaches for Rabbitohs, and when Radley was coming through, he reached out to Radley's management, like to say, maybe like inquire, like if you come to South, and the manager apparently just said, don't even bother. He will never, ever, ever go to that club.
Wow. Fuck. Roosters fans are frothing to hear that shit. Don't even bother. He'll never do it.
And just like from hearing, from inside that system, Billy Smith's a really good example of what the Roosters are about. He's a kid that came through their system. Billy Smith's apparently tremendous on the training field. He's had a terrible injury run. And the Roosters have always sort of said to Billy Smith, you keep doing the right thing, we'll stand by you. There's not many clubs that would still have Billy Smith in their system. When you look at how much promise he had, and I think he's played a handful of games he's 23 years old.
And they're stacked in that position.
He was ready to play first grade at 18. They're stacked in that position. They could have let him go at any given moment. And he's an example that they use to their juniors where if you're doing the right thing all the time, we'll stand by you.
Yeah, we'll be loyal. Let's talk about the roster real quick. Look, there's really nowhere that's weak. They've got Drew Hutchinson for depth in the halves. They've got 3 hookers. Their outside backs, look, you could maybe make the argument they're missing one, like top tier outside back. Outside of that, on their day, Daniel Tupou could be the best winger in the comp. Tedesco's the best winger in the comp. Jason Suoli'i could be the best winger or centre in the comp. Joey Manu could be the best winger or fullback in the comp. Like, they literally have, like, their outside backs are stacked. Their forwards have a bunch of young guys that have got a bunch of experience over the last few years. So Tilly Tupanua, Angus Crichton, like Tyrrell May was actually fantastic for them last year. So like Nat Butcher has still got plenty in him. Lindsay, like this squad is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I will say and we have to be a bit of a negative Nancy, we can't just be all praise. I will say that their game plan still doesn't fully fit yet, in the sense of like, I still don't think that they're going into this year 100% sure on how they're going to play rugby league. Only because we saw probably 8 games last year where we were like, this is the Roosters. And I don't know if that's long enough to go, this is how we play footy. Whereas the Melbourne Storm, I think they're pretty clear on how they're going to play footy with the Munster, Hughes, Pappenhausen, and then Harry Grant in the, like, everything's pretty clear there. Whereas like trying to fit in the Manu, the Suoli'is, the Tedescos, the Walkers, the Kearys, the Cheeses,
they're too good.
It's too much,
honestly.
Almost. Too much.
Like, most teams have 1 or 2 standouts and you structure your attack around those 2 players. The Roosters, it's like, how do we get all our guns sufficient ball? Like, where do we start? How do we get Joey Manu involved? How do we get Joseph Suoli'i involved more? How do we do this so that Teddy's not stepping on Kiri's toes, who's stepping on Walker's toes, who's...
Cheese, then you throw Cheese as a running 9.
It's a really intriguing one. Like, how is... And we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. Do they just try and knock down the door through the middle and just play fast, powerful footy? I can't wait to see how their style of attack is come round 1, because I don't know how they're going to do it.
It might be one of the most explosive sides we've ever seen. Like, I don't think we've ever seen this many explosive ball runners, at least in the outside. Like, is it in the backs? Maybe yesteryear before I started watching rugby league, but far out. Like Joey Manu, arguably, some people think he's the best fullback in the world. He's fucking centre. And then you go, some people think Suoliti is the best winger in the comp and could be the best fullback in the world himself. Like, it's just wild. Meanwhile, they've got Tedesco, who is probably the second best fullback of all time. Yeah, it's insane. So that's the only thing where I'm like, are there too many cooks in the kitchen? Trent Robinson will find a way, but that's the only negative Nancy stuff I got.
I kind of disagree with you. I think he has got how they're going to play worked out. I just think, as you said at the start, they just need to keep players on the field to allow them to do it. I think if they can just keep their spine on the field, I think they are going to be an incredible, as you do as well. But I think they have got it worked out.
And what is that? Is that straight up the gut?
I think so. Yeah. After you said it last week, you got me thinking about it more. I just think that you could see at the back end of last year that once they worked out Walker needs to be the 7, Manu, how he can play his role. And the beauty with the Manu thing is that James Tedesco, he's the most selfless footballer in this competition. He's more than happy just to take a backward step if need be. I think they have got it worked out. It's just about keeping them all on the field. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I will say, like, the back end of the year of Keary and Walker, like, slowly gelling together, was, you could really begin to see what they could do. But again, that's just basically like, if something goes wrong outside of injury, that's the only other thing I can see going wrong.
Yep.
But I don't see much going wrong. I really fucking don't. Like, wow, what a squad. Now let's get on to the Great Warriors. Really interesting squad because they lost a lot, they gained a lot. Do I see them making... so top 4 Roosters? Yes or no?
Yeah, top 4.
Top 4?
Top 2.
Top 2. Matty?
Yeah, they're my top 2 as well. I think the Symbian Sunday took a bit of a gloss over how well they finished the year. They're definitely top 2 for me.
The reason why I'm hesitant to say top 4 is because they've had such a unlucky last few years. It's hard to say. Like, if you went off the last few years, you'd be like, well, something's going to happen that's fucking going to ruin their season. So I'm going to say top 6.
In saying that, they have been incredibly unlucky the last few years, and they finished 6, 5. If they're kind of unlucky next year, they probably finish top 4.
I'm just going to say top 6. I'm going to say top 6. Look, if everyone stays on the field, you're looking at top 4 for sure.
Yep.
But I'm just going to say top 6 because, again, that question of what type of footy are they going to play, I just don't know. What I suggested last week, that's what it looks like they're going to play. But have we ever seen a team be able to pull that off? Yeah, no, I'm not sure. We'll see. But I do, even though I say top 6, they should make a grand final. You know what I'm saying? As long as they get in that finals footy, just like we saw, if they didn't have all those injuries and that, I could have seen them going all the way to a grand final last time.
Yeah, they are a side too, or a franchise that premierships is their business.
Yeah, for sure.
I said the other day, and someone blew up at me, that it's been a long time since they've won a premiership by Roosters standards.
Yeah.
2019 is a long time ago as far as the Roosters are concerned.
Yeah, for sure. And just before everyone blows up, I'm not saying they're going to come 6th. I'm saying in the top 6. Okay, now the Warriors. Solid roster, but I'm still a bit unsure on this roster. I'm still unsure as to, maybe if it was a couple years ago, I could see them push, as in fighting for the 8. But when I see the improvement of some of these other rosters and just how far they've come, and also I still think for years to come, at least another 2 or 3 years, we're going to see the impact of them being away for 2 years, the impact on the juniors, the impact on recruitment. I think people, and I'm included in this as well, we don't appreciate that if just 1 year of your salary cap, just 1 year, gets done by juniors not coming through, having to go out to the market aggressively, and then losing all those players that you went out aggressively. Because when you look at the start of COVID compared to now, the amount of the turnover that the Warriors have had has been quite substantial. I mean, even this year, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 out of their top 25, or at least top 30. That's a big, big turnover. And yes, they absolutely have their gains, but it's an example of the impact of being away from their country for so long that it's hard to manage a salary cap. It's hard to manage a roster when you don't have everyone else. Like, although they didn't play a lot of rugby league, still had all of their systems in place and, could still, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas they were completely disconnected from their juniors whilst they were over in Australia. What do you think about the roster?
And, everything you just spoke about there is the on-field stuff. You think about the start of COVID, Todd Payton was the coach. Phil Gould was in the building. Peter O'Sullivan was in the building. All those three guys have gone to they're onto their third coach since then.
Mm-hmm. And he's a rookie coach as well.
Rookie coach. And, any building that loses Phil Gould, that's going to really hurt. Peter O'Sullivan's one of the best recruitment guys ever. They're in a tough spot. I look at this squad though, Kempy, and you read through the games and you go, fuck, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And you look at the losses and you go, have they squared up?
Yeah.
And as we've said with a number of teams, they're one of these sides that's at the bottom of the ladder with 6 other teams around them that I think are going to improve out of sight as well. But they can't all improve at the end of the day. So I'm a little bit worried about the Warriors. I'm really hoping that home ground advantage can be massive for them this year. I really hope that it can become, a fortress over there. But I'm nervous.
Timmy?
Yeah. Firstly, shout out to Matty. He's put together this awesome booklet of every club and the gains, the losses, broken down into positions of halves, hookers, forwards, backs. Couple of ripping typos in here though. And I'm really excited to see how Wayne Egan goes this year for the Warriors. Great job, mate. There's some rippers in here. Now that they're back on home soil, I think it's very much a rebuilding year for the Warriors. And Warriors fans will be sitting there going, shit, we've been doing this for a few years.
Yeah.
Like, when's the time going to come? Well, as we know, it's been a really tough couple of years from them. They've kept the game alive by moving over to Australia. We know that narrative. They're back home now. Hopefully they can get their juniors back on track. Or I don't know a lot about what's happened to them the last 18 months, 2 years, but just so much turnover in the roster. It's a word I drop way too often, but it takes time to get a bit of cohesion in a squad. And with that many changes, and then you look through the team and it'll be a spine of potentially Chance at fullback, maybe Tamade Martin and Sean Johnson in the halves with Wayne Egan at 9. How does that stack up against other spines in the competition? Not real well, if we're being honest. Sean Johnson, he's again going to be a pivotal part of this side with his experience. How do we see SJ going this year?
Well, that's what I was going to say. My concern is if SJ replicates the form of last year and he had a lot going on personally and all that kind of stuff, it's a tough year for the Warriors. So people listening may be like, well, of course, everyone's starting 7 if they don't play really well. It's going to be a tough year for that team. But it's more, unfortunately, SJ didn't have the best year last year. So we're just going off that recent form. If he rolls into this year, I just don't know if they have another player that can pick up the slack enough.
Where do the points come from? Yeah. If SJ doesn't fire, with Reece Walsh gone, I don't know where the points come from.
Who's their 7 there? These are all 6s. I'd say Volkman's a 6. Tamade Martin's definitely a 6. Metcalf, definitely a 6. Walker, definitely a 6. So, even depth-wise, they obviously lost Taylor. They lost RC. RC's more of a 6, but even depth-wise, if SJ struggles with injury, who's the 7 that's going to come in and steer the boys around?
Who do we think? Do we think it's him and Tamare round 1 in the halves, or
probably Tamade Martin? Yeah, probably. It's interesting because you look at a guy like Ronald Volkman and you would have thought he signed to play NRL because he's at the Roosters and that was the whole. He couldn't get in front of Sam Walker, but then they go out and recruit Tamade Martin and you're like, well, then he's going to be sitting in resis again at a club with no disrespect, but the system's not as good as the Roosters, at least at this stage.
Is Tamare fullback, Chance centre? Does Volkman play in the halves with SJ?
I just don't know if Tamade has the running game of a fullback, the big hit-ups, getting through 200 metres. And I don't know if... you could make the argument that he's just going to be purely ball-playing fullback. You look at a Latrell, the thing is Latrell does have those big hit-ups. He just chooses when to do them, when not to do them. Whereas a guy like Tamade Martin, he would almost just basically be purely another half on the field.
I would go with Martin at 6. I'd give Metcalf a shot at fullback.
Okay.
And then I would pick Chance and Nair Corey in the centres. I think they need to sort out that edge defence because it has been absolute fucking shambles the last 2 years. And if you're not going with them, you're going with young guys who are very talented. But I just think that their development has been completely skewed over the last year or two.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I felt like Kossi, Valia were improving towards the end of the year defensively. Attack-wise, they're fucking pretty incredible. Pompey as well. I thought like all three of their attack is really, really good.
Yep.
But I agree with you. Like if it hasn't improved quickly enough, it's got to be something that's remedied pretty quickly.
I just think if those guys are at centre, it writes my game plan.
Just, yeah,
I know I'm
the
going to go
edges.
at the edges. Yeah, you know that's what you can do. Whereas all of a sudden, if you put, Chance there, and especially Niokore, who I absolutely love at centre.
I love him at centre too.
I look through this squad and there's a lot of talent there. Niokore is the best centre.
It's funny. I spoke to Junior Paolo. I was like, fuck, like why didn't you play Niokore at centre more? He was fucking mad there. And he was like, yeah, but then look at our bench rotation. And he's so good for our forwards in the bench rotation. So I wonder whether Warriors see that same, like situation with Niokore. But he's so good in the centres, bro. So good.
But the one thing they do have is a stacked forward pack. The Warriors. Like they've got enough.
It's solid. It's solid. I think they're.
I think it's good enough to use him to solve an edge because it's fucked at the moment.
And the other thing, perhaps if they do play Niokore at centre, does that allow them to play Tamare at fullback? Because you mentioned his running game that probably he doesn't have the yardage of the better fullbacks in the game. If you have Niokore there, you can get him taking those dirty runs off his line, coming out and just eating meters, and Chan. So that would aid having Tamare at fullback, I think, if they went down that avenue. I don't know if they will, but I'm with you boys. I don't mind him at centre.
I like his big boy, and like it just shores everything up. Like in regards to what you're saying, Guru, like just that defensive grit that you can build off. Another key for me, Adam Fanor-Blake. He still does the big numbers. He's still super impressive. I just wonder, like, for his career long term, do you see it? Like, so basically, where is he? So he's till 2026. Far out. Great for the team. Do you think he stays there for till 2026 if they still struggle?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't think AFB would stay there when they went back to New Zealand.
Yeah, okay.
I really didn't. I thought he'd be, obviously when guys sign these contracts to go to the Warriors, they were going to be living in Australia.
Yeah.
And for me, I thought that was a big chip for a lot of these guys that sign there. Credit to AFB, he stayed loyal, and that's the sort of guy that he is. But if I was, Team AFB, I think I'd be asking, is this the best place for you?
Like, it'd be one thing if he was just a good front rower, got through a bunch of work, really good enough to win, get in the top 4 or whatever. But he's a premier front rower. He's like up there with Payne Haas sometimes, numbers-wise. His footwork is fucking wild for how big he is. He's such a key to them. It's mental.
And I think that regardless of how much of a good front rower you are, you need a good support crew around you as far as front rowers go. And at the moment, I honestly think I'm playing Tohu Harris in the front row with him. And I don't think
especially after losing Lodge. That Fanor-Blake Lodge punch was fucking impressive last year.
Yep.
Super impressive. So yeah, obviously need Adam to have a big year. I mean, he's just got. If he was at a glamour club, like far out.
At the same time, can always find an injury for Noah Blake. Never big injuries, just a lot of like
Niggles.
lot of niggles where he misses a handful of games each season, and he's signed until 2026. He'd be on a good wicket because when he signed, he was playing some exceptional footy over at Manly. So he'd be on good coin. He's locked in until 26. Worst places to be.
Yeah, you're right. You're right in regards to like just little nigglies. So 2020 he played 15 games, 2021 15 games, and then 2022 21 games. So it's like that weird.
Oh, he'll just like.
You can't say he's injury prone.
Nah.
But if he's on big coin, you were hoping 20 plus games each
He'll
year.
just
kind of thing.
bust a finger, then twinge a hammy, then stub his toe. There's always something in there that he always just misses a few games.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone does, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the middle. But you're right in regards to he's a marquee signing. You wouldn't say it's a like a negative, but at the same time, you would hope just to miss maybe if you could average 28 games a year as a front rower, I think that's a good win.
And I was probably thinking more longevity and contract. He's obviously a big boy. I don't know how old he is. He sort of...
Well, he's
27 right now.
27.
So
He's in his he would be in his 6th year of NRL.
So he's locked in till he's sort of 31. And injury-wise, I was thinking, well, you're only one bad injury away from, an ACL missing a season, coming back as a big boy, trying to rediscover your form. He's probably pretty bloody happy on that 4-year deal, I reckon.
Yeah. So really important for Adam Blake to fire. Now, just let's talk about the coach. Do the Warriors need to just back this bloke in, give him like 4 years or something? Like, I'm not sure how long the contract was, but like, if I'm looking outside in the Warriors, I just think they need stability at the moment. Like, unless he is absolutely shocking and whatever, but they haven't played finals footy for how long?
it's been a while.
And so it's like, obviously it can get worse. You can win a wooden spoon. And I don't think actually ever won a wooden spoon, have they? They're one of the rare clubs that haven't.
I don't think they have, no.
Unless like it's that dire, I almost think give this bloke time to lay a platform. If it's good, if it's a struggle for the next couple of years where you finish, 13th, 14th, give him a few years, I reckon.
So since they made the grand final in 11, they've made the finals once in 2018 where they came 8th. And Andrew Webster's signed for 3 years.
3 years. But just get around him. You know what I mean? Get fully behind him. Like, but in my opinion, I don't want to hear about anything higher up than the coach. I just want to hear the coach making all the calls, all the decisions. I always feel like with coaches, like, you got to live by the sword, die by the sword. If you sign a coach and you start, putting in your input and saying, do this, do that, because you're worried about their inexperienced, then it's like, how do we get better as an organisation when we can't identify who was responsible for certain decisions when it's a muddy field? And that's why, and it's very easy to say now because they're successful, but like guys like Bellyache, Bennett, Robinson, even Des Hasler, I know obviously he just got fired, but these guys, when they come to clubs, they almost demand, like, if I'm coming, it's my way or the highway. You got to back me 100%. And I just think with Webster, I hope the Warriors do that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what has me worried, because it wasn't that long ago they offered Todd Payten a contract. He turned it down. He went to North Queensland, and we've all seen how that plays out, and hopefully how it does continue to play out. But to be honest with you, mate, I don't even care who the coach is. Just give someone some time, because this isn't working.
Yeah,
what they've been doing for the last almost their existence, it ain't working.
It shows you how good Ivan Cleary is as a coach. Like, and Ivan Cleary, in my opinion, has improved dramatically since his return back to Penrith, as the way he handles media, even the conspiracy that me and Guru had that he had that Wayne spat intentionally. Like, think about how well Ivan Cleary handles media now. Yep. There should be constant articles about him being the next greatest ever coach, like all of this kind of stuff. You never even hear about the bloke. Like, no one ever sits there when we talk about, who's the best coach in the NRL? It's always like Bennett, Robinson, Desi to some people. Ivan Cleary has been in 3 grand finals and barely lost a game in fucking 3 years. You don't hear nothing about it. Like, he's improved so much. But it shows you that those early raps that a lot of people had on Ivan Cleary were warranted, because he was the only one able to get, and this is coming from a bloke that, I got dropped by the bloke. So it's not like I'm biased. Like, he didn't rate me as he didn't rate me as a first grader.
He switched on.
Yeah, he switched on. He knew what he was fucking talking about. Anyway, so yeah, with the Warriors, I think they've just got to back a system.
Yeah.
And look, put it this way, like, I think it's very easy to say, just replicate the Panther system. Let's go a little bit down. Replicate the Eels, what they did. Because, like, they were literally the spoon team. They'd won spoon like twice in a few years or whatever, and they crawled their way out of it.
And I think this is where, for the Warriors, if you just back a coach in, I mean, I imagine, and you can talk more about it, if you're a player and you're looking at your options, to me, going to the team that has a new coach every 2 years, there couldn't be anything less fucking appealing.
Yeah, because again, a lot of careers are defined by if a coach likes you or not. So you may have a coach. I mean, it even happened in mine. Not like you as a person, but so like Ivan Henjak, when he was at the Broncos, he really liked me as a player. He liked what I offered, because whatever he told me to do, I would do it. But then he got sacked. Anthony Griffin came in, and he liked me as a bloke, but he was the under-20s coach. So he has players that he trusts, that he's bringing through. And so there's plenty of times you can ask any player where a new coach will come in, and for whatever reason, your style of play doesn't suit the way he wants to play. He might like bigger wingers. He might like whatever it is. And so you're right. Like, it's not appealing to be...
It goes the other way too. If you're a coach that you know you're at a club that is sacking someone every 2 years, you're not thinking about setting the team up for 5 years. You're thinking about keeping your job for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're making these short-term decisions, that's why football managers are so important. Like, some people say, I don't get like general football managers. It's like, no, because you have to have some person in a position that is thinking long-term. It's almost like, some people think the democratic process doesn't work, Guru, because all they're doing is trying to get re-elected. They're not putting policies in place for the next 20 years for us. They're just doing shit to get the votes right now.
Same this is why I get up on a Monday morning.
And that's why there's an argument to be said that it's just got to be changed, Guru. Maybe we need to lock in for longer. But then if we lock in for longer, they'll be turned into dictators. So we don't know what to do.
Can't win them all, Kempy.
That's why the country's falling apart, mate. Everything's falling apart.
I smell a new podcast opportunity here. Talking politics with Kempy.
Yeah, politics with the beak. I don't know. And what I do is I just use footy examples to explain situations. So this would be like the Tigers coming back from a coming 9th and 10th,
Dumb it down for the rest of us.
For the rest of us. Yeah, you know what? That actually would be pretty funny if you like literally just explain politics in footy analogies. Okay, yeah. So Warriors, I don't see them making the 8, unfortunately, this year.
Yeah, nor do I. I think they're a team that could finish in a very similar spot.
Well, and you look at those key positions. Like, I hope they all play really well, but there's a world where they all don't hit good form.
Yeah. And look, there's also a world where if Sean Johnson gets back to his best, they've got a decent pack. They have got some exciting young outside backs and everything. Like, there's a footy side in there somewhere. I just think they need a lot of things to go their way to be successful.
If Sean Johnson fires, I can see them being one of those rogue teams that is fighting for 8.
Yeah.
Like, similar to the Dragons last year, where they were just this like rogue side that, like, you'd look at the ladder and you'd be like, the Dragons are 8th place. What the fuck? Like, they're going really well for whatever their roster was set at the start of the year. So I do think the Warriors could fight at the edges of the 8, but I think that's the best they can go. But look, if they go even better, guys, leave in the comments section when they do it. Say, fuck you, Kempy, you got it wrong. I'll say, you know what? You were right. I got it wrong. Now, Timmy? What?
Yeah, similar to you, boys. I've got him, unfortunately, pegged bottom 4, but you touched on most of it. Sean Johnson, once again, is the key to this side. If he fires and puts together a bit of a vintage year, or doesn't even have to be a vintage year, just gets him around well, I think he's still got enough points in him, like creative footy in him. They could push for that 9th to 12th spot.
Yeah.
But I think they're probably 12 months away from where they need to be.
For sure. And it's a rookie coach, guys. Like,
yeah,
you got to remember, a rookie coach is coming in here.
It's hard for me to peg him down as well, because I think more than any other team, if you get one injury anywhere, there's just a huge domino effect, more than pretty much any other team. For example, like if, say, the fullback goes down, then tomorrow might have to go to fullback, and then someone else goes in there. Or if a centre goes down, maybe Niokora has to go in there, Curran has to go to 12, someone has to, like, anything could happen, which makes it so hard to predict. Also, they're going home for the first time. Like, maybe I've got that bias of thinking they'll get up for those home games. That gives me a little bit of hope for them. But yeah, ultimately, I don't have them making the top 8.
And they just feel like a side that you could get to the end of the year and they could have had 9 different spine combinations.
Yeah.
There's so much depth there. It's not even funny. They could have another 9 centre combos as well. Good luck to the coach. We tried to put together a best 17. Fuck me.
Yeah, tough.
I had about 13 different options. They all could be wrong.
Let's get to the Storm. The Storm, really intriguing here. Really intriguing. I have to be honest. Their spine, in my opinion, is the best in the comp. Now that Api Coruscant is at the Tigers, I believe their spine is the best in the comp. But I do think, roster-wise, compared to yesteryear, they are a bit light on. And the reason why I'm so hesitant to say all of this is because we are talking about the Melbourne Storm ad nauseum. They defy expectation. They defy the usual. They defy what we constantly, any other club put in the positions they will put in, would have, had these rebuilding years where they fall out of the 8 or whatever. But the Storm somehow, some way managed not to. But I can't be dishonest and pretend like I'm not looking at this roster going, I don't put them as premiership favourites, probably not even second. The closest I would put them to premiership favourites right now would probably be third or fourth, which is maybe the lowest I've had them for a while, which says how good they are that I'd still have them as, maybe fourth or so. Now, it could be a case of, though, now this is glass half full thinking, what was the key to their success over that 20-year period? It was, as we've mentioned, Guru, keeping all the money in your spine, like this crazy spine of Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, Cam Smith, Greg Inglis at 6 at times, Gareth Whittaker at times, add whoever you want in that 6 role. But their money was invested all in that spine area. That is where they may defy the odds. But when I look at their forward pack, I look at their outside backs compared to yesteryear, outside of Pappenhausen, I go still a top 6 side, but in a bit of a transition phase. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. I think that as much as they were getting older and whatnot, Kenny Bromwich and Felice Kafusi, I think they're two of the best defensive back rowers in our game.
Got to be.
Without a doubt. I think as a combo, they are the best defensive.
And still as well. Not even like just yesteryear. I would argue still the best defensive wedges.
I remember talking to Branko Lee on the podcast a couple of years ago, and he just said that he arrived down there and the conversations he was having with Felice Kafusi about defence was like nothing he'd ever had before. And it just completely changed him for that year and how he was able to, read and how to react and whatnot. So I think losing him is going to be huge. There's a reason why he's not the biggest, strongest, but he's getting picked in this Origin side every single year because his defence is incredible. That's going to be a huge loss. You got Pappy returning as well. Not a doctor. That injury seemed pretty fucked up. It's going to be interesting to see how he returns.
I think that is a actual technical diagnosis.
Term, yeah.
Good enough.
Just in case anyone thought I was a doctor.
I think I've heard that before in a physio's room before.
So hopefully Pappy returns at his best. I also think it's going to be interesting, as you said, for so long they were built off this big 3. And I think that the most impressive thing about the big 3 was that they would play whole seasons, they'd play Origins, they'd play World Cups, and they'd back it up the year after. Munster, Hughes, Grant all played an entire World Cup. Shorter pre-season. These seasons are only getting longer and longer. We're going to 27 rounds. It's going to be a massive test for these 3 to really carry this team because defensively I'm worried about them on the edges, losing those guys. They get Christian Walsh back. Is he going to return as the same guy he was?
Yeah, I mean...
Hope so.
Hopefully.
He's an ageing front rower with a Achilles injury. Once again, not a doctor, but a far from ideal injury for a guy at his age. I'm looking at their forward pack. They've obviously got Jack Howarth that they could bring in to play in the back row. I think Tariq Sims is a great signing. You got the kid from the Warriors, Eli Katoa, who's got all the potential in the world. I think he's going to be an interesting one because for any time over the last 15 years, I would straight away go, he's going to be a superstar.
Yeah.
I haven't seen those young forwards pop out of the Melbourne system over the last 2 years like they have been previously. This would be a good test to see where Craig Bellamy's at. Because I also think as far as the best coaches ever, I think there's starting to be a little bit of pressure on Craig Bellamy.
I think you cannot deny that he is the greatest player developer ever.
Yeah.
Because to be able to develop what he did down in Victoria, it just doesn't get spoken enough. Like this is a non-footy town. He doesn't go into the market when they're superstars. He goes into the market when they're fucking no one else wants them.
Yep.
I will say I agree with you in regards to if you had asked me even last year, I would have said Katoa's going to be a superstar. Boom, put it like write it in stone. But I felt like for Josh King, we had unfair expectations on what he would turn into.
Yep.
He still had a good year, a good solid year. This is no disrespect to Josh in saying that he had a poor year, but I don't think. I mean, I honestly, deep down, I thought like maybe even he'll get a look in for Origin. Like that's how much I was like the Storm. That's how highly I rated the Storm system. I will also say I think their recruitment has almost proven us right what we said at the start of last year, that their forwards were lacking in depth and size. Katoa, big body. Sims, big body. Penne, big body. Chan, is he a forward as well?
Yeah, he's a forward.
He's Polynesian?
I'm not sure what his
Polynesian,
heritage is. His father actually played for the Melbourne Storm, Alex Chan, years ago. He's coming back.
So it sounds like an Asian name, so he might be half Polynesian, maybe half Chinese or something.
He's coming back from Catalans. He can play edge or middle. He's actually, I hadn't seen too much of him. A guy sent me a highlights thing the other day. He actually looks pretty impressive.
He's a pretty big body, isn't he?
Yeah, big, versatile.
Yeah.
If one of these guys is going to jump out of the ground out of nowhere in typical Melbourne fashion, I think it could be him.
He's Chinese Maori heritage.
Well, nailed it. Hey,
Yeah,
said
well
Chinese. Hey, no worries. My grandfather's half Chinese. It's whatever. He really
Do with
is.
that as you please.
Yeah, take that and run with it because it's actually true. It's actually true. Everyone thinks I'm a wog, I'm Italian and all that, but I'm actually Chinese. Now, trust me, it throws everyone for a loop. When they're like, oh, what nationality are you? I usually just go, oh, no, just Aussie because that's what I really am. And then they keep pushing it like, mate, have a look at you. There's something going on there. And I go, well, all right, well, my granddad's Chinese. And they go, fuck off. Anyway, back to rugby league. So I think that proves it. Like they probably were lacking in the forwards. Now you could make the argument, well, of course they recruited that because look at all the forwards they got rid of. But the plans of those losses happen long before the year. They don't just go, oh yeah, we're going to get rid of all these forwards. Those plans would have been before the season even started, most likely. Timmy, what are your thoughts about the Storm?
Yeah, but certainly, I think I'm going in probably with a bit like you boys, the least confidence I have from Melbourne Storm side in the last 10, 15 years. In saying that, as you said, they've got the best spine in the NRL. Like, it's unbelievable. The one, just like you boys, I'm concerned about the forward pack. As good as the spine is, if it doesn't have a platform to work off up front, you can't really do anything. It's as simple as that. And I'm just worried about, is it too big a pack now? I worried about the mobility in there between, as you said, Christian Welch coming back from an Achilles injury, Nelson Asafa-Solomona, Tarek Sims, Josh King, Trent Loiero, a few of these other boys, even Eli Katoa. Kamitha, all big boys. We're looking at, you see the success of more mobile packs in the current day of NRL footy. There's two probably low-key ones who I think could play a big role this season in that pack, and it is, one's Eli Katoa, who you touched on. Again, he's a big boy. Whether he fixes that mobility issue, I'm not convinced, but really has a bright future if Bellyache can get the best out of him. But Jack Howarth is the one who there's just been raps on for a couple of years now, and Bellamy's been so patient with him bringing him through. I was surprised he didn't get more of a crack last year, but the raps are there. They've been patient. He's biding his time in the Queensland Cup. He's this agile sort of back row centre, apparently loaded with skills. If he's the one who can come in, slot in on an edge and be a strike weapon out there, a younger body, a bit more youth in the pack, it could have a big say in how they go this year. So I'm really excited. Probably see partners Tarek on the edge, but I'm thinking Jack Howarth is the man.
I like to hang my hat on this call because this call was made. Everyone doubted me. They doubted the beak. They thought Bellamy knew a bit about rugby league. They thought that the Storm knew about rugby league, and everyone had him as a centre. And the beak stayed strong. I said, I don't think he has the body shape or the mobility for a centre. And look where he is now. Boom, in the forwards. just want to throw that out there. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, Storm know anything about footy? Well, not really. Come to the beak for your footy information.
Cut that out, Matty.
Look, you fucking, the clock, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, so yeah, I agree. Holworth for me is the super exciting one. If you get a chance, go look at his highlights on YouTube. He was a centre in rugby, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
And he was a motherfucker. He reminded me a lot of Angus Crichton when he was a centre in rugby union as well. Similar body shape to Angus Crichton, similar the way he runs the ball, like just the hyper aggressive, enjoys the contact. I'm super excited for Holworth, and he could add that mobile punch because he was a centre, like he has played a bit of centre. So he has, he's at least more mobile than most edge back rowers. That's an area where, like, if the size and the mobility is not an issue in the middle and they can get a little bit of a roll on due to their size and start hitting guys like Holworth, and he can become that kind of like, he's not the same player as a kick-out, but he could have similar impact where whenever they need that momentum and they need to create space for a guy like Munster, who you would compare, say, like is like Luai on that edge, that could be their secret weapon.
Yeah, and that's where they're going to miss a guy like Brandon Smith, because you watched them last year. Every time Brandon Smith took a hit up, they all just got on their toes.
Yeah.
It was flood the middle, let's go now. So someone's going to have to step into that role. And as you said, mate, Bellamy's been so patient with this Howarth. Like we spoke about him all last pre-season. He played in that trial, wasn't overly impressive. And I was talking to a guy in the Melbourne Storm system during the year, and he just said, mate, because of COVID, he hadn't played against grown men before. So Bellamy has just put him there, plugged him in there for the year so he can get his body used to it. And I think it is something that we need to remember with young guys coming in over the last year or so.
Especially forwards, man.
Oh, yeah. And I know he's not a forward, obviously, but Sam Walker is the absolute exception to the rule. It's not even funny. Not everyone is a Sam Walker. Playing in the forwards the way that he's going to play, the target he's going to have coming into
forwards need that contact, bro.
Yep.
You need years of contact with men. It's way too hard just to roll in and cop. Yeah.
And I mean, like there's a situation here where Craig Bellamy, he goes back to the old script and Howarth kills it. Aaron Penne arrives there and kills it. And Alec McDonald or Tepai Moroa kicks on, and all of a sudden the Melbourne Storm.
Well, yeah, because when you look at it, you go, okay, let's say he does what, as you said, we know the Storm can do. Katoa comes and turns into the player and reaches his potential. All of a sudden, on one edge you've got Katoa, on the other edge you've got Howarth, a young superstar with another superstar. And then in the forward pack, you've got a rotation of, maybe Christian Welsh and Nelson Starr, and they bring Tarek off the bench. And they've gone from look a bit light to, oh, no, the Storm are a premiership threat, like, straight away. And so if they can get the best out of these young guys plus their recruits, they're laughing.
Yeah. I also think the other one that I think will be a little bit more prominent than what people are anticipating, Tommy Eisenhuth returns from injury. I reckon he might be a better defensive option out on an edge than some of the other young guys to start.
Yeah. I like the punch that Howarth and a Katoa could add. But in Storm fashion, they do like their defensive edge back rowers.
Yep.
As you always say, Kempy, it's like we're ranking the Storm on being premiership threats, which they are year in, year out.
Yeah.
So while we sound critical, it's like they might not be top 2 this year, predictions-wise. It's, as you said, they could come out and be 6 from 6, and would you be surprised? Not at all.
Not at all. Absolutely not. We're critical of the Storm, comparing it to the Storm standard. Any other club, we would be like, good-looking roster, recruited where they needed to, which we said was the forward pack, best spine in the game. Remus Smith comes back, who was a guy that was super missed last year. They had a basically injury crisis last year as well, and they still managed to finish where they finished, which was, they were fighting all the way to the last game to be in the top 4. So is that correct? They were fighting to the last game to top 4? I think they were with Para, and Para snuck in.
They had that game against Para.
George Jennings comes back. Olam has another year of footy. Nick Meaney, he won't be playing 6. Obviously, he'll be as a depth player, as an outside back. Xavier Coates, another young rookie that didn't really reach maybe as the super heights we thought he would in the first year, but he did struggle with a few injuries, I think. So as I said, it's like, although it's not the roster of Cam Smith, Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, it's not that roster. Michael Crocker, it still has to, if these players reach their potential, it actually can. Not to say that like Cam Munster or Jerome Hughes is Cooper Cronk or Harry Grant is Cam Smith, but I tell you what, they're the next best thing. Like they're the next best thing. Harry Grant, for example. That's what I want to ask about Harry Grant. Are we concerned about him playing 80 minutes each week?
I just had 80 with a question mark next. Yeah. And, mate, I was talking to Matty about this the other day. You have a look at the competition last year. Penrith won the comp with 2 hookers. Queensland won Origin with 2 hookers. The Blues had 2
I think it's the way to go, man.
Kangaroos just won the World Cup with 2 hookers, including Harry Grant. If they want him to be a long-term sort of guy, I do wonder if maybe they do have someone else that maybe starts the first 20, 25 or gives him a spell during the game. I think the only other hooker that's on the roster is Nikorima. You can
He's
play
not really a
Wishart
hooker.
there. He's not really. I would probably say Wishart's better at hooker than what Jaden Nikorima is. I think that's going to be a really interesting spot because I think if they want to get the very best out of Harry Grant over the next 10 years, I don't know if playing him for 80 minutes.
Oh, especially with the way he plays. Like, he's not a Cam Smith orchestra that only runs when the game has been set up to create those holes. He's I'm going to run and create gaps constantly.
And let's say that Harry Grant doesn't get any injuries or anything this year. He's just played in a World Cup. He played an Origin series. He's going to play almost 50 games over the next 2 years at hooker. They need to take care of him. He's going to have to play another Origin series this year. And mate, for all we know, is Ben Hunt going to play Origin for the next 4 or 5? Like, he's going to be close to an 80-minute hooker in Origin soon too, I reckon. So I think Melbourne need to take care of him if they want.
And he has had injuries. He has had injuries, Harry Grant, soft tissue injuries and all of that.
And the thing you forget about Harry Grant as well is that, he's only been playing for 3 years, but he's not a 20-year-old. He's a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
So he is, he's going to be 27, 28 before we know it. And Melbourne have got a superstar there, but I think they're going to have to take care of him.
He's so good. Like, he might be one of the most exciting hookers I've ever watched. Like, in regards to pleasing on the eye that a casual fan or a fan that knows everything about the game, you watch Harry Grant and the excitement every time he gets out of dummy half, he either takes 2 or 3 steps or he'll take 10 steps. You know what I mean? Like, it is constantly exciting. Whereas you look at a guy like Cam Smith. Cam Smith was all about the subtleties of the game, like these tiny details that only he could see. I remember. I don't know. Do you guys remember there was a period where people were like, I didn't really see what's a bit like a normal fan would be like, yeah, Smith's all right. And it was only really the real footy heads was like, no, you don't understand what this guy's doing. Like, he is taking. It was more towards the end of his career that people started going, wow, this guy's amazing. Whereas there were periods there, especially early on, where you didn't see the subtleties of what he was doing. Whereas I'd argue Harry Grant's a highlight reel kind of hooker. Yep. Again, he's not even close to Cam Smith at the moment, but I'm just comparing the two, obviously, because that's their former 9.
But if you have a look at the level that Cameron Smith was at his age, at 24, Cameron Smith was already a fantastic footballer. But you got to remember, Harry Grant's only played 50 first grade games
very early on.
So when you strip it back to that and where Cam Smith was at after 50 games, Harry Grant, the path he's on is pretty scary.
I would still say Cam Smith was a much more complete hooker at that stage.
For sure. Yep.
But I don't think the gap is as big as people think. It's still out and out. Smith was the best hooker in the game and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. If you compare the ages and that and the amount of games they'd played, Harry Grant, put it this way, if Cam Smith and Harry Grant were both playing in the NRL at 24 years old, Cam Smith would be out and out the best hooker, but you wouldn't be like, Harry Grant's fucking light years away. Whereas you compare their careers, you'd be like, well, yeah, he's light years away kind of thing.
And I think if you look at the direction the game's going with having 2 9s in most teams, being a running 9, I think is more important now than it ever has been.
Have I brought you across to the dark side of 2 hookers yet?
You might have.
I think the game has just moved away from the single hooker. As I said, unless your name's Cam Smith, I just look at all the pinnacle teams. Think about it. The Penrith Panthers were starting Api Coruscant on the bench in a grand final.
Yep.
That's how specific to the game plan a 2 hooker rotation was. And so I wonder whether we've moved away from it.
And I mean, we said the other day, where does Jack Whiten fit into this Blues team if everyone's fit? We were saying, we'll just play Jack Whiten as a middle forward because having 2 hookers is so important. You need one on the bench.
Yeah, I think you do. I really think you do. Just that punch to the middle. So that may be an area where, when you look at squad balance, they probably need another hooker. I do really think, though, their plan was to have Brandon Smith at the club for long term. I don't think they expected to lose him. I actually think them, allowing Dale Finucane to negotiate elsewhere was because they were trying to free money up to keep a guy like Brandon Smith to play that kind of 13 hooking role.
When you have a look at their forward pack, is the Nas on the edge experiment, is that done? Do you think they just need him in the front row?
I think so.
Yeah.
You need him in the middle, Skittle and Blokes to get momentum. He's so dangerous on the edge, for sure.
But you can have both, I think. You play him as a middle, as Skittle Blokes, But just from time to time, have your plays running wide off a scrum and get him running it and getting these one-on-ones with the halves that won't be able to stop him. Like, I do think you can do both and not have him as just a straight edge back rower.
For sure.
On Harry Grant, I suppose the exciting thing about him is you covered it pretty extensively, but him and Cam Smith's hooking games are so different. The exciting thing for Harry Grant is that because you're right, he's a highlight reel hooker where he has these big moments and these big runs and scores a lot of tries for a number 9, is that, you know, under the right tutelage, which you'll obviously get at the Storm, if you can get the intricate, finer details of the game right, his wrestling, his game management, these things that Cam Smith mastered, his kicking out of dummy half, it's like the sky's the limit for this kid.
Mate.
Like, whereas Cam Smith, he might have gone, he wasn't that quick out of dummy half. He wasn't he didn't appear the strongest bloke on the planet, but he was also one of the best wrestlers we've ever seen. So that might be a little bit harsh, but Grant has the attributes to just be an all-time number 9, whether that's as an 80-minute man or a 60-minute hooker. You're getting me on board a little bit. I'm willing to enter the debate with you now about it.
You weren't even willing to debate me?
Nah, not really. I mean,
just shit chat. You threw an shit chat. Don't want to talk about
the
it.
game has just become so fast and so physical these days that particularly longevity of hookers, I see what you mean. Short term, I think he could be an 80-minute hooker for the year, but if you're looking at preserving him for, you know, another 10 years, until you're talking about, like the Sharks, Cowboys, Eels all had 80-minute hookers this year, finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th. But, you know, maybe Ivan's got it right with Penrith. Hard to say he hasn't.
Yeah, because you're right. Like the Sharks, Eels, Cowboys essentially had 80-minute hookers. But then you could make the flip argument of like Australia, Penrith, New South Wales, Queensland, all had the rotation in a situation where every single one of them didn't need to have that rotation. It was like purely choice. So the jury is out though. The jury's out. Like maybe that's just because they're so high level they can afford to do that, and other clubs don't have that guy they can bring on that can be just as good kind of thing.
I think the other big positive for Melbourne coming into this season, and I don't know how it did impact them or not, but for the first time, there's no question mark over Munster, Hughes, Grant and their futures. They're locked in. Everything's settled. There's no media reports and everything happening, even though they seem to handle that stuff really well.
Yeah.
It's just smooth sailing. They know what the side's going to look like. They've just got to build their pack around it.
Yeah. And another year with a more mature Munster that's, you know, just doing all the right things off the field is always a good thing. Jerome Hughes, again, he's only in his fucking 3rd or 4th year of playing 7, which is wild.
And once again, we've spoken about it before. You get all these guys, they come back from 8 weeks of World Cup with the best players in the game. It always has a positive impact on guys.
For sure. So what are we saying, boys? Top 4, top 6, finish.
5 to 8 for me.
5 to 8. Ooh, damn.
Yeah, I'll go top 6, leaning towards the 5th or 6th.
Okay, I'm going top 6.
Yeah, I have 4 teams like in my definite top 4, like not definite top 4, but like in my bracket top 4. I've got 4 other teams, and then I've got like Storm and another team kind of fighting for that. But yeah, realistically, top 6, conservatively top 8. You just never know with Melbourne, and also it's allegedly Bellamy's last year, so that could give him another gear as well.
Oh, he's the greatest, Bellamy. It's always his bloody last. It's been his last year for the last 10 years. Okay, let's get on with the Sharkies. Sharkies are such a unique situation. Similar-ish to the Cowboys. Now, the knock from the haters of the Sharkies is the fact that they arguably had one of the easier draws last year. Again, I think that's coming from a place of being a hater, but it's not untrue in the sense that they did at times, if I recall, have a relatively easier draw. But I don't think it takes anything away from what they've achieved. And I also don't think that you can consider them not one of the better sides in the NRL coming into this year, because even if they're draw, like people say, oh, they had an easier draw, but like how much easier was it? Like, you know, it's not 20% easier. Yeah. Like it might have been 5% easier. And, you know, they may have had injuries in key positions heading into those games. So there's always so many variables that can make up for the fact that they had arguably an easier draw. The positive is Craig Fitzgibbon in his first season. So we ranted and raved about Toddy Payton, and rightly so. Second year, it was incredible for the Cowboys. But he didn't do it in his first year. Fitzgibbon, and look, he took over a roster that was, you know, probably not as good as the Sharkies roster because the Sharkies were sitting, I think they came 9th the year that Fitzgibbons took over. In his first year, it's not necessarily the place they finished, which was incredible at second. It's the fact that every single player that played in this squad played the best they can possibly play, outside of maybe some of their older players. But every player that was either young or in the middle of their career played the best they possibly could. So that for me is a sign that they have great systems in place and they are responding to their coach incredibly well. What do you got there, Matty?
Just on that soft draw business, like, yes, maybe they had a softer draw in some ways or another, but throughout the year, they still beat at one point Melbourne, they still beat the Rabbitohs, they beat the Eels, they beat the Cowboys. The only team they didn't really beat up there was Penrith. So, you know, they still beat the big dogs at different points.
That is the knock, though. Like, that's the narrative of, like, they had this soft draw. But that's what I mean when I'm saying, like, how much softer was it? Like, they didn't play... Instead of playing 8 top 8 sides, they played 6 top 8 sides. Like, it's give or take.
And it's not like... With the soft draw, they snuck into the 6 or 4 or whatever. Like, they finished second, and they were 3 full games clear of 5th place. So it's like, yeah, it might have been slightly softer, but they were dominant. Like, what? And they 18 wins and 6 losses.
1 point away from, or 1 or 2 points away from a prelim. You know, like, that could have gone their way. So it still does have to be brought to the table, though. Like, was that the reason why they went on this, you know, really good run or whatever? But I don't think it was the reason. What do you think about this squad? We'll go Timmy first. Timmy, what do you think of this squad, mate?
Jeez, bloody deer in headlights here.
Good luck, mate. Best of luck to you.
Yeah. Pretty nice following the Guru's lead. It's sound pretty intelligent. Mate, it's such a good squad. And again, I'll go back to the old word, but cohesion, boys. How quickly that they gelled as a side last year, particularly a spine. Nicho Hynes making the transition from fullback to halfback. In his first year, he now infamously won the Dally M medal. There's a whole year behind him developing his craft as an organising halfback. That combination with Matty Moylan, who finally strung games together pretty well injury-free all season. They missed Will Kennedy for a stretch at the back of the year through suspension. So this side should only be getting better and better. Again, depth-wise across just about every position, they're really well set up. Hard to say they'll improve on second place, but I think it doesn't have the star power of other teams, but it's just a really well-balanced roster who should be competing in the business end of the season. So, yeah, I like what I'm seeing again from them.
Yeah, it's interesting to say it doesn't have the star power of other sides, and that was my comment, if you remember, Guru, how when they were heading to finals footy, I said, like, the only concern I have with the Sharks is when those big moments come, do they have the same stars that step up into those big moments? I do think that last year they didn't have the stars, but I think that they've actually developed a couple of stars. Like, I think, for example, Mulatalo has just... Mulatalo and Katoa, bar none, most underrated wing pair in the comp, in my opinion.
Yep.
Bar none, underrated. Now, that doesn't mean they're the best, just the most underrated. Then you go to Talakai, Jesse Ramian. Like, again, super, super underrated, but game breakers, especially Talakai. Now, Talakai obviously, struggled a bit towards the end of the year, but we saw what he could do mid-year, and his first full year in the centres. Nicho Hynes, Dally M Player of the Year. When you look at when it comes to squad balance, their halves and hooker, like, they might have the most. They don't have the best hookers and halves in the comp, arguably. Obviously, Dally M for Hynes, but when you look at the depth, I'd argue they've got the best depth in those positions. This is their depth. So they've got Hynes, Moylan, and Trindle. Incredible depth in your halves, especially if Moylan can play every game. Hookers.
And if you need him, Connor Tracy.
Hookers. Blake Brayley, Cam McGuinness, and then Jaden Beryl, who... Didn't he win Hooker of the Year when he signed there or something like that? He won a comp.
Queensland Cup.
Queensland Cup Hooker of the Year. Like, for a Sharky side that was struggling before Fitzgibbon got there, to now having a halves hooker depth that most other teams would be jealous of, is amazing. Then you look at their forward pack and you go like, Hunt, Ueli, these guys aren't even... Nikora, they aren't even hitting their potential yet. Teague Wilton, like Kofusi being brought over, I think he's still got more in him. Jack Williams has still got more in him. And so like Rudolph, for example, I still think he's got a couple of more percent in him, even though I thought he was really good this year.
Not starting in their backline round one, Connor Tracy, Cade Dykes, Lachlan Miller, Matty Cavalli, Mwene Hiroti. How's that for depth?
It's incredible. It's almost like shocking that a side that 2 years ago was, some would say, on the down, is now depth out of their minds. What were you going to say, Guru, before?
I was just going to say, you were talking about Sifa Talakai. I think we also need to remember he had a second row as pre-season. You actually give him now a full pre-season where he can condition himself as a centre. He could explode next year.
Yeah, lose a bit of muscle mass because he's out in the centres.
Yeah.
He could go on to have those same big games just more consistently.
Yeah, and I just wrote down a couple of things. Like I know the soft draw arguments out there. There's no easy games in this competition. Let's not fucking pretend like there is. You also have a look. Like I think they also had a lot of things against them which people don't talk about. They had new halves for starts. Yeah. That's always tough.
Nico had never played 7.
Didn't know if he was a 7.
Moreland hadn't played a full season in fucking 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, Will Kennedy missed a stretch. Wade Graham, he missed the first 8 weeks or so. That then changed that entire edge. In that time, Sifa Talakai moved to centre there. Katoa missed a stretch. He obviously had Sifa without the preseason. Hamlin Mello, I thought he was their best front row in the first 10 weeks. He disappeared.
Got
15
injured,
weeks.
yep.
Like, there's a lot of things they had that went against them. Not to mention a new coach, which is always tough. And yeah, I mean, I still think that if that field goal game goes a different way, I think we're having a very different conversation about.
Well, put it this way: if the Cowboys don't have a guy named Jason Taumalolo running lines on the to score the try.
Well, mate, it even goes back to 10 minutes before that. Chad Townsend puts in the perfect kick to get a shark sin binned. It turns that game on its fucking head.
But like, it took Jason Taumalolo to have that extra centimetre in him to get the ball across the line. Okay, this is going to be a fucking tough question because I would. Okay, I'm not going to say myself. Who are you more keen? Who do you think has more chance to win a premiership in 2023? Cowboys or Sharks?
You want to go first again, Hero, or what?
Yeah, the answer to that is no.
I'll give my answer. And it's only because of the superstar thing. Cowboys by, honestly, like a bee's dick.
I'm with you, Campy.
But, again, if they make the same progress as they made this year, the Sharkies, like they have the Dally M Player of the Year in Nico Hines, a whole another year playing 7, they could, for example, you could say, like, let's say Townsend keeps playing the way he does, but Hines improves again. Then you go, well, there's their superstar. It's Hines that's going to be the game breaker for him. Or you could go, if Mulatalo takes another step forward, you go, well, he's the game breaker. Like I even think Will Kennedy, who was outstandanding, but like the pressure that Lockie Miller is going to put on him this year is phenomenal. Like it's perfect for the club. But this roster is amazing. Seriously.
And once again, I understand what you're saying with the Cowboys. They have that superstar level in them. But I still think if that Cowboys game goes the other way, all of a sudden Hines finishes that game with a finals win. He had 4 line breaks, assists, and 3 try assists in that game. Yeah. All of a sudden, he's the superstar we're talking about. Like it's that. I think that game was so crucial for both of these teams. All of a sudden, if the Sharks win that, they get a week off, then they get a team down to Shark Park or in Sydney, wherever. I think it could have completely changed the narrative. It is what it is. What happened.
I actually agree with you because, like, I guess my point last time is that in 2022, Hines wasn't a superstar yet.
Yeah.
And so, like, now he is a superstar. So I agree with you. Like, he could become the guy that gets him out of he did it many times for the Sharkies this year. But the reason why last year I looked at the Cowboys, I was like, Taumalolo, Valentine Holmes, like these huge names that they win you games. They win you games. It's really that simple.
Guru, you mentioned last week with the Cowboys, you're a little bit concerned that perhaps when these teams come from nowhere to have a big season, it can be, I suppose, maybe you'd call it somewhat second-year syndrome as being a top team. Is there concern for you that the Cowboys regress significantly as well?
You mean the Sharks?
The Sharks?
Yeah, I am concerned about it. I think that when you have a look through this competition over the last 20-odd years, if you take out the Panthers over the last 3 years, The only two teams that have been consistently top 4, top 8, realistically, are the Roosters and the Storm. Over that, like, it's fucking hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you have a look at the Sharks side, and then you have a look at the teams that all missed the 8. They're all going to improve out of sight. I don't think Sharks and Cowboys. I'm not willing to. I think they will play finals footy, but I'm not confident to lock them in like I am with the Melbourne.
Well, it's like, and to further your point, it's like a rookie NRL player. Like, they can have one good year, and you go, this guy's like. Honestly, when I was watching Anthony Milford in 2015, I thought the bloke was going to be an immortal. Like, that's how good he was.
People will laugh at that, but that was a common opinion.
Like, he would, yeah,
he
people
looked like
go,
he was going to be a superstar.
Like, people will, laugh and say that's ridiculous, bro. Back then, when he was at the Raiders, he was outrageous. Comes to the Broncos, he was like this new kind of half where he was super strong, fast as anything, could ball play. Low center of gravity. Anyway, and so, like, you apply that same logic to, the Cowboys, like, they've had one really good year. The Sharks have had one really good year. Now, I think we all agree that they're going to have another good year. But there is a world where things don't go right and they lose their mojo and they don't have 5 years of history to fall back on and go, no, we've been here before, boys, where we have a bit of a lull, we'll get out of it. Like, for example, the Storm, every time they go into a bit of a lull, they just go, boys, we've been here before. We know exactly how this all plays out. Whereas the Sharks and the Cowboys, let's say they get a few injuries or whatever and they go into a lull, they don't have the same well of experience to pull from like the other teams do.
And that's where Fafita and Tolman could be a huge loss.
Yeah, for sure. Like, that experience, absolutely. Because, like, you look at this side now, I do think Dale Finucane and Cam McInnes can pick up that slack, but you're right, it is, and Wade Graham as well. But outside of, like, Cam McInnes, Dale Finucane and Wade Graham, like, it's a relatively inexperienced squad. Like, you look at their backs, all relatively inexperienced. I don't think any of them would do over 100 games, would they? Jesse Ramien's not even 100 games yet. He's 90,
I don't think any of
97.
them would be over 100. Yeah.
So it's
Jeez, I thought Ramien would for sure.
No, he's at 97. So, yeah. And Sharkies fans and other fans, like, we're not being negative on the Sharks at all. This is just, you can't just sit here and pretend like everything's going to be rosy. There are things that can go wrong, and that's the only thing I see going wrong for them is, like, they lose a bit of their mojo and then their confidence just crashes.
Yep.
And I see the same thing that could happen at the Cowboys.
And I mean, like, you only have to look at the Broncos. It can take 2 weeks, and then you're in free fall all of a sudden.
The Broncos roster, when this whole disaster happened at the Broncos, some of the greatest players to ever play the game were like, this team can win a comp this year.
Yep.
Took 2 or 3 losses, and it snowballed for years. And that's how quickly it can happen. So you're absolutely right. I don't think it'll happen with the Sharkies, though. I think both Todd Payton and Craig Fitzgibbon are our next generation of really good coaches. And I'm super excited for the Sharkies. As I said, I'd have Cowboys just a little bit ahead of them, but the improvement that this team has shown over the last year, in 12 months' time, if we're sitting here and we're saying, like, Britton Agora had one of the best back rowing performances of the year, I wouldn't be surprised. If Mulatalo or Katoa is in the running for winger of the year, I wouldn't be surprised. Talakai or Jesse Ramien have one of their better years. You know what I mean? Like, that's how exciting it is for the Sharkies right now. It's the most exciting, obviously, since they won the comp. Yeah. And even then, when they won the comp, they didn't have a Dally M half in their side. Because, like, as in a Dally M, they may have had Dally M half, but a Dally M medal winner, like winning the whole comp. And that's what they've got now in Nico Hines.
Yeah, and I think it is going to be interesting with Hines. He played every single game this year except one. So if they go through a stretch where they maybe lose Hines for a period of time, as with most teams, but you've probably then got a halves combination of Trindle and Moylan.
It's not bad.
Not bad.
It's not bad.
It's not Hines, but it's
But
not,
you look at the other sides are going to be competing for a top 4 spot with. It will get tough all of a sudden. So, yeah, I'm not writing the Sharkies off by any means, but history tells us that there are teams that jump out of the ground that they don't tend to stay up there.
Well, the probability of 2 teams jumping out of the ground and then 2 teams staying at that level is probably pretty low.
Yep.
But I still believe. I'm still a believer. I'm a believer. I'm super excited about the Sharkies. I think that another good thing as well is I don't think their salary cap is like they got Nico Hines on unders. Matty Moylan would be on unders. They just lost Fafita, who would be on really decent coin. I think their salary cap probably it's probably the most balanced cap in the comp right now.
I think so.
Because they really do not have, with Nico Hines already being signed, they don't have any of these players just decimating their cap on $1.2 million a year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. That's another impressive feat. They finished second. Not a single $1 million player in here. Maybe not even close. Matter of fact, there might not even be a 900K player in here right now.
Yeah, I don't think there
like
is.
Finucane would have been signed on, what do you reckon, 7?
Yeah, maybe.
6 or 7?
Yeah.
Probably 6, 4 years.
6,
yeah.
Outside of that, like Hines, he'd be on around 6, maybe even 5. Because when he signed, he was off the bench at the Storm.
Yep.
Exciting times for the Sharkies. Far out exciting times. Seriously, I cannot wait to see them play next year. So I've got them top 8.
Yeah, top 8. Yeah.
Top 8.
Yeah, I've definitely top 8, but I think they'll be in the top 4. To answer the the Sharks Cowboys question, it's funny because we spoke about it kind of last week. Gun to head, I said Cowboys, but it really hasn't left it's been living rent free in my mind all week. I've spoken about it with a few people. Like, I think it's so even, as you guys were saying. Like, the forwards, Cowboys probably have a bit more depth in the forwards, but again, like, pretty even. Cowboys probably get the win there. The backs, the Sharks definitely have better depth, but the Cowboys have someone like Val. So, again, very even. Don't know who to give the points to. The spines are pretty even. Maybe because of Nico, you give the points to Sharks, maybe. But then, you got Dearden, who played Origin this year.
Scotty Drinkwater at fullback.
And Drinkwater at fullback. The hookers pretty much cancel each other out, I reckon. Maybe Robson just ahead, maybe. I don't know. They're pretty even. So it's an incredibly tough question. I'm very high. I'm high on both. I'll probably, if I had to pick, I'd say Sharks. I don't know why. Like, I got a good feeling about them, but yeah, really tough question. I'm excited to see both teams.
It's because you're a New South Welshman and you're biased.
Honestly, it actually could be. Like not because of that, just because maybe like the Cowboys have to travel. I don't know. Maybe that plays into it as well. Yeah, I'm not sure, but
it's what's ironic is their finals game represents how close it is.
Yeah.
Like, that really represents how close they are as clubs right now.
For me, the difference between the two is, though, that I look at the Cowboys and they, Chad Townsend was at halfback. Tom Dearden had a great season. I think they're a bit more of a consistent sort of side, Cowboys. Because look at the Sharks. I mean, at the end of the day, their halfback had the largest Dally M point tally of all time.
Craziness.
It's great. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's super impressive. If he doesn't have that sort of year, how far could they fall? And this is, as I said, I'm not anti-Sharks. I just think it's
just a
interesting
new
to consider.
standard that we're judging them at. We're not
100%.
judging them as the last 5 years. We're judging them as they could win a comp. Like, if they're in a grand final next year, I would not be shocked and sitting here going, holy shit, where's that come from? Like, I would be like, nah, like, that's what they've been building for, like, this year.
And these are the problems you want to have if you want to win a comp.
Oh,
You want people asking the question, can you do it for not 1 year, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, and what systems are you putting in place to become a powerhouse?
Yeah.
As always, guys, brought to you by Bloke Beer. Make sure to get in your local. In celebrations across all of New South Wales, we are currently on promotion. So head into your celebrations in New South Wales, guys. Celebrations stock us all across New South Wales and ACT. Support them because they support us. Locally owned, Australian, independent. Great bottle loads to get into, guys. So celebrations, just type in celebrations near me. It'll show you the nearest celebrations. They should stock Bloke. If they don't, it's either sold out or just get them to order it in. It's on promotion. Plus, plenty of Bloke merch. We've got plenty of singlets. We've got party shirts. We've got Bloke thongs, Bloke board shorts. Perfect for summer. Head to bloke.shop. If you sit here for hours and hours each week enjoying the content, support the show by grabbing some merch. Plus, it is high quality merch, especially the party shirts are like really nice, soft, stretchy material. Really, really nice to wear. Now, on to the Newey Knights. Really a lot of turnover. They've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And they've gained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The story of the off-season was they needed a half. They've got that half. Now the story of the preseason will be, is Kalyn Ponga playing 6? And we might repeat this for the rest of Kalyn Ponga's career. Every preseason, is he playing 6? Now they've also got depth in the halves. They've got a lot of depth in the halves, actually, interestingly. Hooker as well, I think they're lacking a bit of depth in the hooking position. I know Kurt Mann can play there, but he's probably more of I don't even know. I think probably more of a 14 these days. I'm still not convinced with this roster. I'm still not convinced, unfortunately. They had a really good forward pack last year. They looked like they were on the up. Everything looked like it was going better. And then, unfortunately, they had a really poor showing. I think Adam Elliott is an absolutely fantastic buy. I think they've replaced most of the big losses that they've lost pretty well. But with the improvement of a lot of the other rosters, I just can't see that same amount of improvement with this roster. Even though there will be improvement with a genuine 7 there, I still don't see them competing with some of the top tier, like your Cowboys, over a year period. Your Cowboys, your Sharkies, your Roosters, your Rabbitohs, your Storm, your Penrith. As long as the Hastings things works and they can just find a spine to stick with, then I think that this is a great building year into the coming years for sure. Hastings is still, 26, 27?
Yep.
So he's got years left in him. Kalyn Ponga, obviously, he's only 24 or so, 23, 24. Then you've got Jaden Brayley, who's still got plenty of footy left in him. But I think this is a year where the Knights need to solidify and decide what their squad is, the core of their squad is, what is the core of their culture going forward and building towards the next year or two. What do you guys think of the Knights 2023 squad?
I agree with you, mate. I think that losing Clemmer, you've spoken about it a lot, like such a tremendous fucking footballer, and it's going to be hard to fill that role. I think that the Saifidis, they need to go to another level. But I also think that even if the Saifidis go to another level, I think they need to get Hetherington to Leo Thompson and Matt Croker. One of them needs to really step up as well. They do need a third front rower that can really go at the same level with these Saifidi boys. I think they will both start, and that's where normally you had a Jacob on the bench last week who would come on for that middle third of the game. Now I'm sort of wondering who's going to be that guy off the bench. And obviously, I think Jackson Hastings is a great sign. I think he's exactly what they need. But as you pointed out before, Timmy, if you're not winning it through the middle, very, very tough. So I'm just worried about if that extra front row is going to emerge. Maybe Jack Hetherington can be that guy. But I keep hearing that they might be playing him on an edge, which is a big, big worry for me. I think they need him in the front row. And if they get the very best out of Jack Hetherington, he's a different body shape to the other two. He's got a bit of lunatic in him. I think he could be great. But I just think at the moment they're probably one front rower short of really giving it a big shake.
Timmy?
Yeah, obviously, I'm just so glad for starters we're not sitting here talking all season about why don't they have a half, why don't they have a half, why don't they have a half. We've got the half, thank God, so that one's out the window. Their 1-13 I quite like, a bit like Guru though. I just think they're light on for quality depth. I mean, you look at, I've got one predicted teams up here, and it's just got Tyson Gamble, Leo Thompson, Jack Johns, Jack Hetherington coming off the bench, and you look at that, and that's, again, there'll be alterations to that. They might have a stronger bench, but that's concerning. But their 1-13, I think, is a good squad. The big question will be, whichever position Ponga doesn't play, 1 or 6, let's say he plays 1. Who's the 6 with Jackson Hastings? Because Adam Clune, he has value in a squad because he can be that organising half to get a team around the park, but they've got Hastings to do that, so they don't really need that in their halves.
Probably Gamble.
Yeah,
Gamble's probably your man, isn't he? Gamble, I'm a fan of him, and lots of people will probably kick back on this, but I really liked Kurt Mann at 6 a couple of years ago. I thought he had probably his best season in the NRL as a 6. Whether he is an out-and-out 6, I don't know. But I think with Hastings running the show where he can just be a ball runner, give good quality ball to Kalyn Ponga, I don't mind Kurt Mann at 6. But you're right, Gamble's the logical starting 6. But if that doesn't work out, I do think he's an option.
Because it's like, let's say, whether it's Mann or Gamble, I guess you got to look at that spine here. You got Kalyn Ponga, you got Hastings, let's just say it's Gamble, and then you got Brayley. How does that spine stack up to other top 8 spines? And obviously you can do that with forward packs, but I think like spine is almost like you need a good forward pack to get around. But like spine is a really good indicator of like where a club is at. Forwards, like you can have like guys kind of come in and do a really, like for example, Penrith Panthers is such a perfect example. Like a lot of people don't even speak about Leota. Leota is like one of the best forwards in the comp. I'd argue he's one of the best defensive forwards in the comp. Like he folds blokes on a regular basis. And then you got who's the bloke? It's not Eisenhuth. Who's the guy they bring off the bench?
Leniu?
They got Leniu, but
Sorensen.
There's another big front rower they bring off the bench, and he just battler.
Eisenhuth.
So it is Eisenhuth?
Yeah,
I must be getting that mixed up with bloody the Storm's Eisenhuth.
Yeah, there's Matt Eisenhuth at the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, okay.
At the Panthers. Sorry,
Panthers. Yeah, so like a guy like him, he comes in and he does his job. He gets through his work. Mitchell Kenny, not a big name, but gets in, gets his. So like forwards are these like this. You need obviously your superstars, but you can kind of like mix it in with. Whereas like I look at that spine and I go, really like Kalen is the out and out superstar, obviously. But we hope he stays on the field for the whole season for one. Hastings is an organising 7. Outside of that, you've got Brayley, who is a good solid 9. But comparing that to other top 8, like you look at Rabbitohs, who might finish 6th or 7th. They've got Damien Cook, Cody Walker, Lockie Ilias, Latrell Mitchell. Then you've got Sharkies. You've got Brayley, Blake Brayley, Nico Hines, Dally M winner, Matty Moylan, Will Kennedy. Like, I just look at this Knights and I go, I just don't know if they're there yet to be playing top 8.
You're spot on, Kempy. I suppose another question led into that is, can Jackson Hastings be the man to unlock the best from Kalen Ponga?
Yeah.
What can he get out of Kalen Ponga?
It's interesting because like Hastings is such a dominant player, but that team is Kalen Ponga's team. Like he's the man. He's going to be the man. The club's always going to back him to be the man, even if Kalen Ponga is making the wrong calls. The club is still going to back Kalen because he's the guy that they're going forward. So it could be a masterstroke where Jackson Hastings really does lay the platform to allow Kalen to do what he does best. Or they could have some growing pains where they really struggle to find that good balance between, you could even argue Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown had growing pains, where Brown didn't really know where he fit in the puzzle. It took till Moses to trust Brown to release a guy like Dylan Brown. And so when I look at this Knights, and I just... The other concern I have with the Knights is like a lot of off-field stuff has been happening at this club for a few years now.
Yeah.
And it's always a bad sign when you're hearing like this happened behind the scenes and, like the whole Clemmer with the trainer thing. Like we never should have heard about such utter nonsense. Swearing at a trainer. Like we always get so caught up in these stories because the media push it to us. And fair enough, like the media are just doing their job. They're reporting on whatever happened. But like when you look back on it now in hindsight, it was absolutely insanity that we heard about a front rower, a maniac front rower, swearing at a trainer. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? But that's a sign of things not going well at a club. Like, and that's another concern I have with the Knights. It's like, I feel like when Adam O'Brien came in, it sounded like the club was quite stable and there wasn't that many dramas behind the scenes. And maybe I'm misremembering, guys. Knights fans will know. I understand the whole Tinkler situation and the Wayne Bennett. I feel like that was quite a few years before that. I kind of felt like with the O'Brien situation, they had turned a new leaf and Nathan Brown had obviously moved on. But I kind of feel like these old situations or old negative energy is kind of bubbling to the surface again. Maybe that's a symptom of just not going well and you don't hear about that when you're going really well. But that's another concern for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you still hear, like, you're hearing stuff.
Like Frizzell is being shot.
I keep hearing Frizzell's being told that he can leave if he wants.
It's like
whether it's true or not, fuck knows.
He was one of their better players last year.
Would it shock you if it was true though?
No, absolutely not.
So, yeah, it is a worry, mate. And I think as Tim just said, I think if they can sign a fullback, I think the 13's really good.
If they play him there.
Yeah. God knows. Yeah.
I mean, if they're going to play Hetherington on the edge, Adam Elliott not at 13 may be a real thing.
I know we keep saying it, but Adam Elliott has to be the biggest no-brainer of all fucking time. And that's where, mate, if they play Elliott at 13, like I still think Brayley, I think he's one of the most underrated 9s in this competition. I think he's a sensational footballer, Brayley. He was coming back off an injury
Just
last
a bit
year.
out of sight, out of mind because of his injury, really.
Yeah, for sure. But if
Yeah.
you have a look at his last 5 or 6 weeks last year when he actually had a bit of match fitness, he was braining it. He was killing it, Brayley. Hastings at 7. I think they will play KP at 6, and I think they'll sign someone at fullback. I'd love to see a Lockie Miller. He's a guy that's been rumoured. I think he'd be perfect up there. I think he'd be a perfect fit. Also hearing that they're considering playing Gagai at fullback potentially.
Oh, I think he's a bit older now.
So do I.
Keep him in the centres.
But
Gagai, really?
apparently,
No.
or playing on the wing is another one I've heard. So
Playing on
whether-
the wing? What?
whether true or not, I don't know.
Oh my god, he was the best. He was the best centre in the comp for first 10 weeks.
18 months ago.
Yeah, like the first 10 weeks of
for
this
last
year,
season he was too, yeah.
he was the best centre in the comp, and then he struggled a bit towards the end.
Yeah.
So if KP's 6, who's 1?
That's again, it's that spine, man. It's
Yeah.
really missing. Like for example, Kurt Mann and Tyson Gamble are your options for 6. You've obviously got that young fella, Mapapalangi. Mapapalangi, but he's probably a bit too soon to be playing 6. But like so, Kurt Mann and Tyson Gamble, but Gamble, in my opinion, a good solid player, but I wouldn't consider him. I think he's a depth player.
Yeah.
And Kurt Mann, is he a 6? So like you've still got this situation where like they're missing a player in that spine because then you go, okay, well who's a fullback in their squad? Who's in their roster?
What do we know about? Do we know much about Bailey Hodgson, the Pommy? He's a fullback.
Fullback.
He's only 20, so
He's been here for 2 years, and I don't know. I feel
And
like
they've chosen to play Tex Hoyt fullback, who
Correct.
left to Hull.
but he
instead of-
is 20, so maybe he just wasn't ready.
Wasn't ready,
I don't
maybe?
know. Let's
maybe
check out his.
I don't know.
interest.
I just think I find with guys like him who came with a bit of hype, I have heard very little about him over the last 2 years. So
5 games in Cup last year,
Oh, okay, well that's
0 tries, 0 try assists.
yeah,
Stats aren't everything, but yeah, maybe.
But I mean, being a 20-year-old in a Newey Knights squad and only playing 5 games of Cup, unless he was injured. So apologies
Yeah.
if he's injured, but you should be playing Cup pretty much regularly for a team that was struggling.
Yeah, I don't think he's quite kicked on like they anticipated he would. So, I don't know. They're going to be a very interesting
Because
team,
like
mate.
at fullback, they literally have no one.
Yeah. Well, I'm honestly having a look at that, and as I'm putting together their best side, I'm kind of considering playing Kurt Mann at fullback.
I was about to say the same thing. Kurt Mann at
Jeez.
fullback, Tyson Gamble at 6. Then
Yeah.
you've got Kalen Ponga at 6. So you've got Mann, who's not a fullback, playing fullback. You've got Kalen Ponga, who we know he's a fullback, yet to see whether he's a 6. You've got Hastings coming back from a pretty brutal injury. And then you've got Brayley, who is halfway back from recovery, essentially.
And I mean, it is a bit strange that the year you move KP to 5'8" is the year that you sign Gamble, and you also sign young Will Price, who I think's a 5'8" from England. So
And you've got your Mapapalangi, he's a 6 as well.
yeah, so
Hodgson was injured last year.
He was injured?
Yeah.
Okay, so apologies to Hodgson. Yeah, it's an interest. Their roster balance management has just been all over the shop, hasn't it? Because now they've gone from. I mean, you could make the argument they still need another half, but like they've gone from desperately needing a half to now they desperately need a fullback.
yeah.
Fuck.
I do think that if I was coaching this night side, I think that I would have Hastings and KP. If you're going to play them in the halves, I think you would let Hastings sort of play both sides of the ruck. I don't think
Kalen Ponga wider.
Yeah. I think Kalen Ponga will be wearing 6, but I think he'll be playing sort of a one-step in sort of fullback.
Play
role.
it similar like what Hines does, where he's just touching the ball constantly.
He has to.
Yeah.
You cannot play left and right if Kalen Ponga's in the halves, which is exciting. If Jacko's running the show through the middle and Ponga's sweeping as if he were a fullback, essentially.
Yeah, it's that's the negative side. The positive side. A couple of years ago, Bradman Best was the best young centre, young outside back in the game.
Yeah.
He gave us back at his best. Dan Gagai, we all know how good he is. Dom Young was incredible at the World Cup. Greg Marzhew sorts his defence out. He's one of the best fucking wingers in the comp.
And Marzhew right now is what Dom Young was 2 years ago. And they managed to sort his defence out. So glass half full, fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
glass half full, you've got a very good back line. Like a very fucking good back line. Because as I said, Bradman Best hits his potential. They were talking Origin 2 years ago. Dan Gagai, know him. Dom Young was arguably, some consider him that he played better than even the Fox as a winger at the World Cup. So at least, the second best winger at the World Cup. Greg Marju, as we said, sorts his defence out, could be great. Tuala and Heimel Hunt, they're great depth, and Tuala at times is really, really good. So when you look at their backs, and then you go, okay, let's say the Saifidi brothers hit their potential. Adam Elliott kills it at 13. Jack Hetherington, you keep him in the middle. Fitzgibbon, so you've got a bench of Hetherington, Fitzgibbon, Croker potentially, or Leo Thompson.
That's where it gets a bit choppy.
Yeah.
But it's still like you go from a team where you're like a bit concerned that they may not be, like they may run around the 12th or whatever, to, they probably could, they may fight for an 8th spot.
It'll just be, just depth-wise. Like, there's a decent depth in the back line, but a couple of injuries, and it gets thin pretty quickly. So I can see them like potentially starting the season relatively well, but they're going to need a bit of luck on the injury front, I think.
And that's the one beauty they do have. I think when you have a look at the draw, that they do have a really good start to the season.
Okay.
So that's where I think if they could potentially get a little bit of momentum early, maybe they could kick on from there.
To be fair as well, Kalen Ponga is the sort of player that can turn a club around.
Yeah, and I think when we're constantly having this conversation, everyone's assuming that KP is going to fail. If he doesn't, we've seen what he can do in the Origin arena, and as much as I could probably name you 5 or 6 better halfbacks than Hastings in this comp. Hastings could be perfect for what KP needs.
Yeah,
he could just, as you said, just play that sweeping sort of fullback role every time, and Hastings can really open that up for him. So. I think they've got potential, but they are going to need a good injury run.
Is Adam O'Brien on his last dance right now?
I think he is. I'm a bit surprised that there's other coaches getting more talk about them than him.
What do you reckon, Timmy?
Yeah, if they start 2 from 8 or 9 or something, then the pitchforks will be out.
Yep.
Are we convinced about the Kalen Ponga switching to 6? Do we think it's a good idea?
No, but I like it more since he got Jackson Hastings.
Do you think?
Not really. I mean, for all the concussion reasons we've spoken about in depth on previous podcasts, I like the idea of him getting more hands on ball at first receiver. Just quick, flat, fast footy. I think he will tear sides apart, but I also think he can do that from fullback. Mm-hmm. So I don't like it, to be honest.
I don't like it. Keep him at fullback.
Yeah.
So
good there.
He's so fucking good there. Less contact on the body, less responsibility. He can choose when he comes in.
Yeah.
He can choose. I think he's just been so starved of, having a consistent spine to set him up that's why he hasn't been able to engage the line as much, is because, 1 week it's Mitchell Pearce and then he's injured or whatever, and then he gets released and then it's Newhart. Like, he just hasn't had the structure or foundation to give him an opportunity at fullback. But would it surprise me if he plays really well at 6? No, not at all. We're talking about one of the game's biggest superstars.
Yeah, as you said, the concussions, it's always a worry. We can't not talk about it. Defending in the front line. I mean, when Jackson Hastings was in there a few weeks ago, I sort of joked with him and said, "Fuck, you might not have to make a tackle next year, because you're gonna that's going to be your game plan to force KP to make 30 tackles." I really do hope that his head, body, everything holds up, because if he goes down for Newcastle, it's carnage very quickly.
Oh, if he goes down. I mean, they literally, if he goes down, it's a tough gig. And same with Brayley as well. Like, they have no other 9s in their squad.
Yeah.
They suffered that last year. They didn't have him there, and it was a struggle without him. And they got rid of Randall. Randall's a Titan? No.
Yes.
Titans? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, mate, if there's any early injuries, like long-term injuries, Kurt Mann could become a 9-6 halfback 1 for a season all of a sudden. So.
So, look, a lot of potential. I think, as I said, Adam Elliott's a good buy. I think Hetherington's a good buy. I think Gamble's, their buys are good, for what they needed. Elliott, Hetherington, Gamble, Hastings, Marju. And then Pierce Paul, apparently decent from the Super
they're
League.
coming over the year after, though.
Okay, so I remember you saying that last time. But, so you've got Marju, Hastings, Gamble, Hetherington, Elliott. That's good buys for a club that is not going that great. So a lot of potential. Unfortunately, though, I see them missing the 8.
Yeah, I've got them just missing the 8.
Yeah, missing the 8.
Yeah, they seriously have not much depth. And for the Ponga thing before, like, I don't reckon they've really improved putting him at 6. They've just weakened one position to strengthen another. So unless they go out and get a fullback, I would say no to that question. Even though Ponga can come out and kill it, he's still going to kill it at fullback. They need to come out. They need to get a fullback ASAP. They've got 3 top 30 spots to fill. But even if they get a fullback, I still haven't missed in the 8th. Their depth just isn't enough for me.
What I don't get, and it's to your point, it's like, what can he do at 6 that he couldn't do at 1? Like, look what Teddy does every week. Like, he touches the ball 1,000 times. It just doesn't make sense to me. You're increasing the risk of more contact to his body. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. I'd understand if he was on the wing or a centre and you needed to move him in to give him more ball, because on the wing and centre you can't do that. Fullback, there's fullbacks that most fullbacks that usually have more runs than halves do. So I don't understand it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
What was the Bevan French obviously hasn't signed anything.
No, I don't think so.
Is there still chat of him coming over or not?
I'm not sure.
Or did that sort of fade into the abyss?
Yeah, I'm not
I think
sure.
it faded when they signed the other 2.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So Knights, unfortunately, we feel they missed the 8, but happy to sell it. I mean, it'd be great for the game if they make the 8, because there's footy in the Newey area. They absolutely love it. It's probably the most loyal fans of all time.
Oh, 100%. Bevan French signed a 2-year deal with Wigan.
Wigan.
Yeah, so
and Pierce is from Wigan, isn't he?
Yep.
Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, now on to the mighty Titans. Look, Kieran Foran is exactly what they needed. Absolutely exactly what they needed. Randall also really good when it comes to hooking depth. Sam Verrills also really good when it comes to hooking. I think they've made the right decisions that we were kind of talking about pre-2020. We felt that the inexperience in the halves may be a bit of concern. We felt that they needed a hooker. Also, I think it opens up the ability for them to play Aaron Clark at 13, who excelled at 13 rather than hooker. I mean, I remember going into last year, like, he was literally publicly promised the 9 role before the season had started. Aaron Clark was, by the coach. And we were all going, what the hell is going on there? That is bizarre. Anyway, gets 3/4 way the year, and credit to the coach, to Holbrook. He, you know what, put him back at 13, and he was fantastic. I think this is going to sound like a positive and a negative. I think they've made all the right decisions, but I still think that when I look at this roster, it just doesn't compete with the top-tier rosters at the moment. Good building blocks, though. Good building blocks, because they've got 2 young halves that can learn so much off Kieran Foran. Then you've got Brimo, who had an incredible year last year. Then you've got another year for Campbell, who was great. You know, Tino Fasul-Malawi, fantastic. Fodawaker, I think this is a really important year for him to regain his ascendancy as one of the better front rows in the comp. You know, we saw when he played Origin in that year that Queensland got beaten, he was one of our best players. But I still think this roster is a little bit away from challenging some of the top-tier rosters.
I completely agree with everything you said there, mate. I don't have them as a top 8 side. I think that recruitment-wise, they've done really well to get Foz and Sam Verrills to go up there, considering the position they were in. I think they've done very, very well there. I think they're rectifying some mistakes that they made 18 months ago or whatever. We've spoken enough about those. Credit to the Titans, but I can't see them competing with these sides. I mean, yeah, you have a look through their back line. Outside of, like, the guys that play in the spine that are stars, the rest of these guys, I find their outside backs to be very hot and cold. Hopefully Aaron Shop, he can sort of change that a little bit. But all the other guys, like, on his day, Brian Kelly's unbelievable. We've seen Jojo Fafita, Patrick Herbert, you know, all these. Sami's another one that's great, but then they're either here or they're here. And it's a real worry for me. Defensively, I think Shop will be great for the outside backs. Similar to the Warriors, their edge defence always really worries me. But I mean, I guess the headline act here is the impact that Foz will have on Fafita.
What do you reckon, Timmy?
Yeah, I'm so stoked that they've finally gone on this recruitment drive with a defensive mindset. I don't know why it's taken as many years as it has because they've been able to tackle for a long time, the Titans. Points coming out their woo-ha. Like, they've got great attacking contingent there. But, yeah, just Foz, Shop, Verrills, all such great defenders. And it'll strengthen them immensely. I'm somewhat upbeat about them in terms of it's been a tough few seasons. I think it's an improved roster for that exact reason. The experience Foz will bring there, and just like we've spoken about it a lot, but the direction it'll bring and experience for Toby Sexton, he'll learn so much playing under Foz. I think there's the framework here for a good side. Again, probably 12 months away from being as competitive with the top tier sides, but like AJ Brimson is an absolute star. And
so good, man.
And the fact that they've got their halves locked in for the season, you'd hope
your
so.
halves?
Well, what do we have? Sexton and Foz?
No.
Who?
No way. I don't think there's a chance. Sexton's in
Foz,
this team.
Brimo, Campbell, Verrills.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So you got Brimo at 6.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to have Campbell in my opinion, you've got to have Jaden Campbell in the side.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well,
that's where they've made it really awkward for themselves because they've got their best player playing out of position. And I understand why I would do the same thing, but then you've also got 3 Australian schoolboys halfbacks in Tanner Boyd, Thomas Weaver and Toby Sexton that aren't going to be in the fucking side.
Just whatever they do.
They can't win, Titans, eh?
I know. I feel for them.
They recruit the best sevens out of school.
Yeah.
Just fucking...
Whatever they do, just stick with it for give them 8 to 10 weeks to come good at least.
Yeah.
If they do go Brimo in the halves, which you're right, maybe they do, and Campbell at fullback, just stick with it.
Yeah.
Give them time to gel in and come together. So,
and speak to Sexton and Tanner and be like, as you like Sexton's 20 years old, Tanner might be 21, 22, and just be like, boys, like you are the next up. You just need to bide your time. Now it's very much easier to say that to these young fellas that could get contracts elsewhere, but that's part of creating a good club is you keep some of these guys in Q Cup.
I have a hypothetical question. Just say, as you said, stick with what they've got. But if Campbell misses a couple of weeks in, say, round 10, do you stick with AJ at 6 or do you put him at fullback, completely reshuffling the whole kind of setup?
It's a good question.
Well, I think then you've got to shuffle Brimo back there, but like that's a what if of injuries. I don't think. Yeah, I just don't think they've got the players to cover a fullback position that I'm looking at right now in the outside backs. Depends where you are in the comp as well. Like it depends whether the combination is really working and so that you want to keep it there. It's a tough question though. Tough question.
Could you play Jaden Campbell anywhere else?
No, fullback
No way?
only. Yeah, I just think fullback only.
He's too small to play in the front line.
I think you can only play in fullback. And give him time to develop like connections with. Depends how long he's out too. If it was a 2-week thing, I think you just chuck Brimo back there quickly to give you Tanner Boyd because you've got Tanner Boyd and Sexton there that are out and out halves. Whereas when I look at these backs, do you know anyone that's an out and out fullback here that's outside of Campbell?
No.
I don't think there's anyone.
No.
Whereas if it's long term, maybe you keep Brimo there and try and bring in a young fullback that's in your squad that isn't on here. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a bizarre situation they've put themselves in because like both Sexton and Tanner, who were their sevens most of the year last year, because obviously Sexton got dropped, Tanner came in, won't be starting. I personally don't think they'll be starting this year. I personally think it'll be Four and Brimson. But when you go Four and Brimson, Campbell, Verrills, like that's a kind of exciting spine. Like it's one of the most exciting spines they've had since they've started and had like Preston Campbell, Scotty Prince. Now I'm not saying I'm not sure it's as good, but like Brimo, for example, like the fact that he has the games he has in a team that struggles is incredible. We know how good Foreign is. Jaden Campbell, like, is electric at the back there. Defensively, obviously needs to sort his game a little bit, but in attack, like, so if their frontline defence can get sorted, that may release a bit of pressure on the fact that Jaden Campbell's a smaller body and doesn't have to make as many tackles. All of a sudden, if that spine can stay together and fire, I don't know if they'll make the top 8, but I can see them fighting for the top 8.
They'll be an entertaining team if nothing else.
You can always guarantee that from the Titans.
What do they do? You talk about, like, will Foz unlock David Fafita. Foz plays on the left edge. Bo Fermor plays left edge, who was tremendous last season. Is it going to change? Do they play Fermor on the right and Fafita on the left? Because Fafita can play either edge easily to get the best out of Fafita. Or if they just run Brimo in the halves, do they back Brimo to get the best out of it? Because, like, Foz and Fafita is a dream combination.
Yeah. I'd probably put them two beside each other.
So you just
Fermor on the other side.
On the right.
Because I feel like he could play both sides. He's just a line runner.
Yeah.
Like in
surely.
tough carries, gets through his work.
If they put them two together, like, Fafita could score 20 tries this season.
Literally.
It could be unbelievable.
Yeah. I would put them together for sure because, like, not only that, like, if there's a person in that team Fafita's going to listen to, it's Foran. Like, if Foran says, mate, fucking get there or get here or take a carry, he's going to do it. Whereas if you chuck him on the other side, the communication's just not going to be the same. So I can see, definitely.
It could be the year of Big Fifi.
It could be.
I'm feeling it.
I mean, it's his last year of contract, isn't it?
Oh,
So
before he becomes a Raider.
Yeah, oh, please. Give me a break. He's coming home. Coming to the Broncos.
Just speaking of contracts and whatnot, could be interesting timing. Jaden Campbell, he comes off contract at the end of 2024. So that means that, November 1 this year, he's able to start negotiating with other teams.
Yeah.
If we get a world where the Titans don't fire this year, you've got AJ Brimson who's locked in 2026. I personally can't see AJ Brimson playing 5'8" in 4 years' time. I think he wants to be fullback. I think fullback is his best position. Do you see them having both of these guys in their team for the future?
I think that I see where you're alluding to, Guru, and I like where your head's at because I think they might be timing it with a Sexton or Tanner becoming good enough to take that 6 role, and then they make the tough call with Campbell as to whether they keep Campbell and then move Brimo back to the fullback position.
Yeah, okay.
Because they've basically got 2 years guaranteed of development of halves before they have to make that. I mean, they may have to make that call earlier because obviously he comes off November 1, but they've got him there for 2 years. So, 2 years of halves development, surely they can develop Tanner or Sexton into a decent...
That's going to be the tough balance, though, isn't it? That even if Foz does develop one of these guys, they're going to have to be patient and wait. I'm sure there'll be other clubs that'll be looking at him going, we can give you a jersey now.
Maybe. I mean... Is there any club that you would see that would be interested in Tanner and Sexton to start
Not right now, but in a year later with Foz.
Maybe.
If Foz does what we're hoping he will do with these guys.
See, I think Titans will just have enough money to keep him. Because, Foran will be on the way out, getting older. And, I just think that the Titans will be in a position to be able to, pay... Say, you just need another year wait. You only need to wait another 12 months. You've got your contract. It's there. We'll re-sign you for X amount. I don't think at the moment, with everything we know, I don't think they're at risk of losing fringe halves to other clubs. As in, risk at losing fringe halves to start at other clubs.
Yep.
They could lose them for depth or whatever. But right now, I think that the Titans are probably pretty safe at losing a fringy.
Hope so.
Because Tanner's been around for a little bit now, hasn't he?
Yeah, but they've never given Tanner an opportunity to play halfback, and he's still not going to have that opportunity now. This is where I think,
Well, let's say he does progress and Sexton progresses. What club do you reckon could use Tanner or as a starting?
In 12 months' time, I'm not sure how it's going to play out. Warriors. I just worry that the Titans, we're saying when they develop one of these halves, if there's one thing the Titans have shown they can't fucking do is develop halfbacks.
Yeah.
That's just my worry.
No, for sure. It'd be interesting to see what they do with Campbell at the end of this year.
I think that's going to be the big talking point because from November 1st, he's going to have contracts being thrown at him left, right and centre. And I know AJ Brimson is, the best bloke in the world and he loves the Titans, but he can't want to play his career out of position.
And at a club that's struggling.
Yeah.
And there are NRL clubs for sure that would love to sign Brimo.
100%.
And
he gets to play his preferred position and probably play or potentially have a better shot, depending on how the Titans go, of playing some finals footy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough because, the Titans, we sound a bit, I don't know, me personally, I might sound a bit negative on the Titans, but I'm actually not. I think they've done the right thing. All the things 100%. We complained about last year, they've ticked all those boxes. It's just I just need to see it because like going into last year, some people had them bloody top six. Yeah.
And look, it's not their fault, this position they're in. I mean, if an AJ Brimson or Jaden Campbell are in your system, you have to do everything you can possibly do to keep them.
Yeah.
I get that, but it's just awkwardly placed for them, how it's worked out.
The positive for Titans fans, though, is that their squad is much more balanced than it has been over the last few years. Like, way more balanced. They've got depth massively in the halves, which a lot of other clubs would actually even envy the depth they've got in the halves. They've literally got 2 NRL halves ready to go in reserve grade right now. Like, they're not like top tier yet, but they're 2 good young NRL halves that we've seen play NRL, can get the job done if they have to. Plus, they've got Foran and Brimo. Hookers there a little bit light. Actually, no, they're not. They're Randall's there. So Sam Verrills and Randall, they've got 2 hookers. I think a real key for them is their forward pack, just that defensive side of it. Moe needs to go to another level. Tino just needs to keep doing what he's doing. Fafita needs to, because he did have good moments last year, but I think what you were saying, Timmy, put him outside 4, and Firma was outstanding last year. Aaron Clark at 13. Isaac Liu, I think hopefully adds a bit more punch this year than he did last year. So Stimson could be all right for him. So I see them at the edge of the 8 this year.
I reckon that Tino's younger brother's very talented too, that's in this squad as a forward.
Does not surprise me.
No shock there. I think they've also got Payne Haas's little brother in the squad too.
Yeah, Cleese Haas.
So, I mean, if 1 or 2 of those guys can kick on a little bit, that'd be great.
Where do you finish them?
Got them bottom 6.
So like 10th to...
I think 10th would be a good knock for them.
Okay.
Yeah, anywhere from probably 11 to 14.
I got them 9th to 12th. 9th to 12th.
I think I'm closer to you, Denon. I think, honestly, it's one of the most underrated bunch of signings in the comp this year. Like, we're all talking about Dogs and Tigers, but I think they've signed exactly what they need, which is a lot of grit, and they've filled those positions. So I don't know if they'll make the finals, but they're in that bunch of teams improving, and I think they'll give it a good whack.
I hate to lay Timmy up like this, but another signing, Brett White as the defensive coach coming in. That could be one of their better signings, I think.
Well, they definitely need whatever defensively, they need to change it. They needed to change it. So hopefully he can bring that change.
Kuma Stallion dribble this time? Or?
Kuma Stallion?
I was just thinking of which direction to take it and how I go about it. And I think we all know he's a great Kuma Stallion.
Everyone already knew. You didn't even need to say it. They knew.
Exactly. They knew. They knew he was a product of the Stals.
Just by the way he played.
Kuma royalty. Tough as nails like the rest of us.
Now, Parrot Eels, we've already really spoken about the half situation, so we won't talk about that. I mean, we've already really spoken about a lot about the 9 situation. But let's talk about their roster. Obviously, Papali'i, massive loss. I still think their forward pack with Paulo, with Campbell Gillard, Nathan Brown still at the club, hasn't been released, Ryan Madison, Sean Lane, Hopgood arrives. I actually think, and I'm sorry to steal your thunder, Guru, and you've already kind of alluded to this, but I actually think he might even be a key to kind of like taking their game. If they were to go to a new level, he could be that guy because they finally have a ball-playing number 13 that is suited like today's game. Yep. Now, I know Maddo loves to play there, but it just seems like Brad Arthur is like, no, I bring you on off the bench, your impact. I also think the fact that Papali'i is gone will mean that Maddo will probably start on the edges more likely, more consistently. But I think Jermaine Hopgood could be something that could really impact them quite a lot. What do you reckon?
I think he will be their 13, and I think that if Madison did want to play 13, having those first few weeks off is going to really bite him in the arse because he's going to give Hopgood an opportunity.
Well, there was a report saying that they want to change it now.
Surely you can't fucking do that.
Surely not. Like, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. I
love Maddo, but what is doing, bro? Walk me through it, bro. Walk me through it. Why wouldn't you just pay the cash?
I've spent so much time trying to think of a reason why that makes sense to me, and I can't think of a reason why.
The only reason why I could think of is he's got a lot of personal things going on in regards to finances. Like maybe he's supporting and he just didn't have the cash or something. But then why wouldn't the club forward it anyway?
Take it out of a pokey at Parramatta Leagues and get it sorted.
Well, like the club could forward his pay from next year. Like they could just go, we'll give you $4K now or whatever. What was it, $4,000?
Yeah, 4K.
4K, we'll give you $4,000 now, and then we'll just take it out, like deduct it from your pay over the next 12 months. Anyway.
Yeah, whatever that situation is, whatever. I think that you'll see Hopgood starting the 13. I think he's in for a huge season.
Huge season. Timmy, what do you reckon about the Eels?
Yeah, still a really good squad. No reason why they can't, again, compete for a title. Probably being a little bit critical. Backline depth, they're a little light on. They'll more than likely have Bailey Simonson starting at centre again. Sean Russell scored 2 tries in the first half of the round 1 last season. Was he ACL or something?
I think it was ACL, yep.
ACL, but he'll come back in and he'll compete for a starting spot, so that helps. But
I think he was the one that Jaden Campbell dropped his knees into accidentally.
That's right.
So I think he was in hospital for
You're
weeks.
right, and he came back. He did come back.
Actually, yeah.
So, but
yeah, outside backs for me is a bit.
It's pretty light.
Yeah, very concerning. Because, like, for example, like Bailey Simonson, is he a winger? Is he a centre? You know, when he plays his best footy, good, solid outside back, but you don't know what he's going to be. Obviously, Gutho, great fullback. Sivo, I want to see a bit more work out of Sivo. Yeah. Like, I feel like he should be one of the best wingers in the comp. He's an incredible finisher. We all know that. But I think and I spoke about this last year, if you want to take the step into the modern game, I don't think you can afford to just have your 8 to 9 carries as a winger anymore.
100%. Like, there's no reason why he shouldn't be running for 200 metres a game.
He's massive, bro. He's so big and strong. Will Benzini, I think he's been outstanding. I think we're going to see another great year from him. He's still super young. He might be 20 years old, 21, so young as anything. Wonga Blake, I'm still unsure as to what his best position is. I don't think he's a centre. Defensively, I just don't think he's a centre. But then we saw on the wing, he had some good games, but then under the high ball, he was really struggling. I really like when Wonga Blake plays his good games. I love watching him play footy. He's amazing. It's just, I just feel like he's got more in him, and I don't know if we're going to see it this year. I really hope we do, because if he plays his best kind of footy, then he turns into a strike outside back for them, which they need.
He's a tough one, Wonga Blake. I've said for a while, I think he's a better athlete than he is a footballer. He's such a good athlete that you want to have him in your team because he's got so much potential. But, mate, I agree with you. I don't know where on earth his best position is. And yeah, as you both said, the backs are a little bit short. You've also got Assi that's joined the club. He can play centre. He adds a little bit more to it. But as a whole, I agree with you. There's a little bit of a depth issue there. I almost completely forgot that Tom Opachik has left. Fuck, he was a solid footballer.
He was I'm surprised. Because it's not like he would have been offered a Motza somewhere else. Maybe he was offered a really good contract at Hull. But I feel like he would have been perfect to round out this outside backs where it goes from, a bit light to, no, like if they keep their starting 17, they should be pretty sweet.
I'd love to know the sort of contract he is on. Because, like, respectfully too, Tom, he's not the sort of guy that I would think an English team would go, fuck, this guy's a game changer.
That's what I'm saying.
If you want to sign a strike centre, Tom Opachik probably wouldn't have been he'll be great for them. Yeah, he will be fantastic for them, but he's not an absolute star out there. I'm surprised there wasn't an NRL team that found a spot.
You know what else is interesting is this, in this list anyway, and maybe they've got much more in the extended squad, but there's only 8 outside backs.
It's weird. Yeah. And they've lost Niokore, who was another option at centre when needed.
Maybe Blake Talangi, Tony Matali, and Zach Sini's an outside back.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think Blake's meant to be Blaze. He's a 5'8". Zach Sini's there too.
Oh, Blaze, he's a 5'8"?
Yeah, he's a 5'8", yeah. And I don't think you'll see him for another year or two.
Zach Sini holds his own if he comes into the top 30. He was all right at the Tigers.
Yeah, he did a good job, I guess.
In terms of, like, depth, you would want him starting round 1, but...
Got potential. He played some good footy at the Tigers.
Yeah.
I think Assi will be pretty close to next centre up, to be honest with you.
Really?
I'll look at that side.
Okay. In regards to their forward pack, like that's where their power lies. Like that's where, and then you've got halves of Dylan Brown, Mitch Moses. They've got RC and Arthur. I think their halves depth is fantastic. Hookers-wise, if Hodgson plays a whole year, that's a massive win. Mitch Rain, I think he's super underrated when it comes to a depth player. I was actually really surprised that the Titans got rid of him. That surprised me. So when it comes to their forwards, halves, and hookers, I think they're doing great. Just the back's a little bit light on. But if Sivo, Benzini, and Blake and Simonson, if they all play 90% of their potential, then it's a top 4 team, in my opinion.
Can they afford to have a 9 and a 14, like a Hodgson and a Mitch Rain? Do they need to do that, do you think? I think they have to, don't they? I don't think you can run Hodgson as an 80-minute 9.
Probably. I just haven't seen Hodgson play in so long. I don't really know. Like, does he fatigue in games? Does he not fatigue?
Not really. Like, he goes the distance easily, but he's coming off an ACL and he's, 33 or something. So, prior to that, he got through 80 fine.
Yeah.
It's a big ask over if you're Parramatta Eels and you want to win a comp. 31 weeks.
Are we going to see, more Jacob Arthur on the bench and Dylan Brown goes into hooker or something? I know it sounds crazy, but it's kind of not that crazy because we've seen
worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you just go with Hodjo. Like, he loves it. He loves a scoot out of dummy half. He loves a run, but we've spoken again in depth in recent podcasts about how he's going to have to take a back seat to Mitch Moses and Dylan Brown. So maybe they say, mate, just rein it in a little bit. We'll play you 80, but just manage yourself.
Yeah.
Get through, make your tackles. He'll run when needed, but...
I was going to say, the Eels haven't really had to rely on an explosive hooker.
Nah, and he doesn't have to... doesn't have to be explosive for them. His game management will be really helpful to both Moses and Brown. He's got a great kicking game out of dummy half, taking more pressure off them. But I think he can conserve himself over 80. But ideally, you'd have someone there like a Havili type character that can eat some minutes out of him.
All right, where do we see the boys finishing?
Top 8. I reckon 3 to 6 around that mark.
Timmy?
I'll say top 6, but I think there's no reason why they can't go top 4.
I think 4 to 8. 4 to 8. This year I don't see them making the top 4.
Yeah, I'm the same. Bottom of the top 8 for me.
4 to 8. So still top 8, just 4 to 8 in my opinion. Now on to the Penny Panthers. This is like a tough one to talk about. So sorry, Penrith fans, but it's like, what do we say? Incredible squad. Should win the comp. Next.
Yeah, we'll pat you back for 30 weeks during the season.
Yeah, don't worry, you'll get your raps. But okay, we'll talk about it as quickly as we can. Halves sorted. We've spoken about it ad nauseum, but the biggest question, in my opinion, is the hooking role. How do they replace Api Coruscant? Sonny Luke, really crafty in attack. Defensively, he's a bit of a smaller hooker. In saying that, Ivan Cleary has shown that he's willing to have Mitch Kenny on there to do the dog work, get through the dog work, bring on the smaller, the crafty hooker in Sonny Luke. And like Api Coruscant, defence is solid, but, he would miss a fair few tackles. And so maybe they're prepared for it.
Thinking Kenny starts, plays the first 25, Luke on for 55?
Yep.
Maybe even less. Maybe Luke on for 30 initially, and
just
Kenny,
as he eases in and gets those reps,
gets the contact and the pace of the game, and Kenny just plays more of a... Because they've just got so much fucking strike. It's like... It's incredible. So that's a big question. But I guess the biggest talking point with the Penny Panthers... So outside backs are incredible. We all know that. Tom Jenkins, Taylor May, Taruva, Crichton, Tungo, Edwards, To'o. But the biggest talking point is Crichton's manager the CEO has come out and said Crichton wants to play fullback. His manager has said he wants to. And what comes with that is fullback money. The Panthers can't afford fullback money. So thoughts on Critter and being at the Penny Panthers in 2024?
I don't think he will be. I think he will make a move, and good on Critter. Fuck, he's been patient.
Yeah.
Like playing out of position for the last few years as far as he's concerned. So I do see him leaving, and I think that Critter is a star. Love everything about him, but they can cover Critter. The next guy in won't be as good, don't get me wrong, but they've got guys like Tom Jenkins, they've got Taruva there, they've got guys that can come in and do a job. Said the same thing when Matty Burton left, that they've got Isaac Tungo ready to come into the wings, they've got guys that can come in.
The only thing I will say, and this is being super, super nitpicky, it's like when the Roosters lost Latrell. Like everyone's like, okay, look at the players we got. But those big moments, those big moment players, there's only a few of them in the NRL. Like that, you don't have one in every team. There might be one in every 5 teams. And the amount of games Critter has gotten them out of is absolutely mental. So I agree with you. Like, Taruva will come straight in and fucking kill it.
Yep.
And maybe he will have those big moments in him. But you could argue Critter has had more big moments before he's 22 than 95% of NRL players ever. It's absolutely shocking how many big moments he's had.
And I think that by the time Critter leaves, they'll be backing Cleary to be that moment guy.
The big moment guy. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they... Because you need a moment guy. And I think that there's been plenty of games that I've watched since Trell left. And I know that people that don't like Trell are going to say, well, it was joint with the fact that Cooper Cronk was leaving. But I think that since Trell left the Roosters, there have been games that I feel like Trell would have had that moment and pulled something out. I mean, look what he did with the Rabbitohs. Like, the Rabbitohs would... they weren't going great this year. And Trell comes back... The amount of big moments he had and pulled you out of the fire was absolutely insane.
Yeah, you don't have to like him, but if you're going to tell me he's not a superstar, you fucking kidding yourself.
Yeah, he's not one of the... he is a big moment guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you'll point to the one game that he had that was bad, like, oh, but what about that Origin series 3 years ago where he played poorly? It's like, mate, I'll show you 10 minutes of highlights of him winning games.
Then he came back and won a comp 6 weeks later.
Yeah, by flicking the ball out his... Was that the same year?
Or the year before that, where he gave it to Chambers on the biggest stage.
Yeah, anyway.
Pick your moment.
And although like Latrell is in a different league to Critter absolutely is that guy for the Panthers.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, there is an argument to be made that actually it'll happen 1 year, but there's an argument to be made if he's not in that side, they absolutely do not win the 2021 grand final. Like, absolutely not. Actually, didn't he get an intercept in the 2022 final series as well?
Yeah, he got one from dummy marker.
Yeah, who was that on? Was that in the grand final?
No, that was the World Cup, wasn't it?
That was a World Cup.
That was World Cup.
World Cup.
Anyway.
Anyway.
I thought he had another one in the NRL finals as well. But anyway,
He may have.
There's that many now. You just sort of lose
He had
track.
one. He had one in the grand final replay against South. So he got it in the grand final, and then a couple of weeks before the finals, they played South, and he scored an intercept. Maybe that's what you think.
Was that
of.
this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fucking. And that was a game where you were up 12. Was that the game where you were up 12-0?
It was when South had 5 line breaks in the first 20 minutes. Like,
And I think you was up 12-0, and then you went into half at 12-all because Tottenham made that length of the field.
oh no,
try.
that was the prelim. That was the prelim. Yeah.
Anyway,
either way.
Either way, he's a massively big game player, so it's going to be interesting to see how they like. Put it this way, I feel like over this two-year period, Panthers have lost a lot of magic. So Kickow, Appy, and Critter, they're these magic players that you just like. They do these fucking wild stuff. Am I concerned in the slightest for the Panthers though? No,
No, not at all.
not at all.
Can I ask you both something? From watching that World Cup and watching the way that Nathan Cleary played, what wasn't his greatest, 5-6 weeks of footy, whatever it was. He obviously played a lot down the left side. Do you think we'll start to see Cleary now that Appy's gone take more control and play a bit more,
Probably
floating over the left?
Yeah, probably. I think we'll see Cleary touching the ball more.
Yep.
Even though he's already quite dominant. I think we'll see him getting into the like Nico Hines numbers though.
Yes.
So yeah, probably I reckon. What do you reckon, Timmy?
A bit more of a hands-on role, but I mean, he gets a lot of touches as is. And I even found with Appy, as good as his running game was, like he picked it up a lot if, like when Cleary was suspended and he'd miss a stretch of matches, or like if it was certain weeks that they were out or Luai was out, he'd run more. But when they were there, he did a lot of distributing just because of the strike they had out wide. So I don't think it'll change immensely, but yeah, like he'll get a few more runs under the belt.
Outside of that, they gained Luke Garner, Tyrone Peachy, Hoskins, Cogger. I think they've signed intelligently. They've lost a wide running forward. They've gone out and signed 2 really good wide running forwards. Cogger, good depth signing. I guess the only, if I'm being super nitpicky, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have 7 outside backs in their top squad, top 25 at very least. So look, knowing the Panthers, they've probably got like 10 young guns that are in the top 35 that train with first grade, but they're just not in the squad. But if we're just going critical off this list, if they get 2 or 3 outside back injuries, that could test their depth.
They've got Luke Garner who can shoot out to centre and do a job. I mean, let's see how he goes in the preseason. But they've got Tyrone Peachy there as well. If he's all right, in terms of just talking depth, there's a few options there.
But I think it takes it from a like holy shit, this is a scary back line too. Oh, there might be some misreads.
Yeah.
There might be some loose defending around near the ruck or on the edges on the
slight weakness in an impenetrable side. Yeah.
Again, that's me just being super critical. Is the fact that they have 7. But look, the crazy thing is like Taruva made the team of the World Cup, and he's not even in the first top 7. That's how good this squad is. Looking at their forwards, Leota, he is so underrated. Linu, I think it's going to be interesting to see whether he goes to the Dogs or somewhere else, because he was linked to the Dogs, and I think he is off contract next year. 2024. And he would be desperate to become a starting front rower, because like that's the kind of player he is. But this is an incredible squad, absolutely incredible squad. What else is there to say?
Who's going to sign Jack Cogger on overs in 2 years' time?
It's a great Jack Cogger. Anything else to add with these guys? Again, sorry Panthers fans, but there's there's no real negatives. Like, as we've already talked about kick out, we've already talked about Api Coruscant. They may miss them quite a bit, but like what's bizarre is as soon as Kickout signs with another club and leaves, all of a sudden Liam Martins becomes the best fucking back row in the comp. And we're like, where'd this come from? Oh, not where this come from. We knew he could do that. But he was incredible in the grand final, and he was one of our best forwards for Australia.
Yep. Even like you sit there and go, maybe a bit weak in the halves depth, losing Sean O'Sullivan, Isaiah Katoa. You think, if Nathan Cleary goes down, can Jerome Luai do it? Well, we've just seen him dominate a World Cup, so you're like, him running the show for Samoa, he would have learnt so much from that. So going back to Penrith, if Cleary does miss games, look out.
I do think it's a really exciting time for the Panthers, as far as I think losing Appy is going to be the biggest test this group has faced yet.
Yeah.
But I also think that when you have a look through the guys they've lost, like Isaiah Katoa, Jermaine Hopgood, Sean O'Sullivan, these were all their depth sort of guys. Now you're starting to see the vultures coming to Penrith and taking from under their junior grades. Like you have a look at their halves for SG Ball, Flegg, they've pretty much all been taken this year.
Yeah.
So you are starting to see them face the challenges of the Roosters and the Melbourne Storm, where other teams are just picking them apart.
Well, even like Broncos to a degree, like we lost, like Sam Walker, obviously we lost him. Reece Walsh coming through, we lost him. Now, no, Broncos aren't in the same, I guess, space as Roosters and that, but we still had some of the best young guys coming through the systems. Penny Panthers, it'll be all similar to what the Roosters and Storm have done. It's that culture. It's that ability to make these players believe that, you will get an opportunity. The problem is, though, with a situation like Nathan Cleary, especially in that 7 role, and also like his closeness to Luai, the fact that they grew up playing together, it's almost like it's a package deal. So like if it was just another player that they hadn't played up, like grew up together, if that player stops playing well, it's almost like, well, okay, yeah, he'll get dropped because he's not playing well and he shouldn't be in the first grade side. Whereas I feel like with Luai, the fact that they've grown up together, it's almost like do not separate. Like they got rid of Burton, not got rid of, but they couldn't keep Burton and they chose Luai. That's how much of a package deal this is. And rightly so. They've been in 3 grand finals in a row, won 2 of them. But the unique situation, it's kind of like, you look at like, for example, you look at the Knights after Joey goes. They struggle to find a 7. And you go, why would you struggle to find a 7 when you have the greatest 7 of all time? But it's almost because all these juniors are like, what's the point of even being here when I'm never, like literally, for the next 10 years, I'm not touching a footy in NRL unless someone gets injured. Yep. And it's the same with Cleary. Thurston retires from the Cowboys. They have to go to the market to find a 7. Darren Lockyer retires from the Broncos. They struggle to find it. They have to go to market to find a 6. And so it's like a double-edged kind of, it's almost, if you have a all-time great 6 or 7 or in a position, you lose the good guys underneath, like a Katoa, because it's like, I'm never going to get a crack, like never.
Yeah, and if you do get a crack, if you time it perfectly, if you get your opportunity, you're going to get compared to them.
Yeah.
Which just makes it even harder.
And so, yeah, that's the only negative is their depth's going to be tested, but they've got the biggest rugby league nursery in the country out there. They've got all the finances behind them now. They're on the forefront of culture when it comes to being cool to young kids. Like young kids now, the cool club is the Penrith Panthers. They've got the characters, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, What an exciting time for the Penny Panthers.
There is one guy that he's not on their losses, but he is on the, and we're about to talk about them. It's a good little segue for the Dolphins. Mason Teague, who was, I think he was the Panthers under-19s captain last year, a lock forward that they've lost him to. He's won the
And they lost Salmon, Hopgood as well. Like
Hopgood.
a lot of their bottom tier, not bottom tier, but fringes.
and this is the challenges that come with being top tier.
Yeah. Now, onto the mighty Dolphins. Not sure where they're located, but they are called the Dolphins. They are called the Dolphins. Is it the Brizzy Dolphins? Is it the Queensland Dolphins? Anyway, on to the Dolphins. Squad-wise, they are absolutely missing a superstar. There's no denying that. We speak about it every single week. Ad nauseum, you guys know how we feel about that. They've missed a superstar. They've been leveraged by nearly every player in the comp to get more money. In saying that, all of that, if there is literally one coach in the history of rugby league that could turn a solid roster to do something special, I don't mean win a comp, but like make the 8 in their first year, it's Wayne Bennett. And he did it as recently as, put it this way, that Maroon side, in my opinion, was further away from a win of that series before the series started than the Dolphins are from being a top 8 side.
I don't remember that series. Do you
Don't recall, mate.
They are? Oh, it's worse, like your journos came out and said it was the worst side in 40 years or something like that? Don't remember it?
Nah.
Back to the Kuma Stallions.
Woo! Let's go, baby. That's why I'm wearing this, because I knew that would happen. That would be brought up. And I wore my famous Queensland shirt with the goats on it. So as I said, like their roster's not bad, like at all. You know, like Sean O'Sullivan, good solid half. Anthony Milford, he had a couple good games at the World Cup, then he struggled a bit in his last game. I really hope Milf gets back to where he was, or at least closer to it. I'm getting further and further away from thinking that he will be able to do it. I will say, though, if there is one man that could find that in him again, it is Wayne Bennett, because that's where he played his best footy, arguably. Like some believe, sorry, Timmy, but some believe he played his best footy at the Raiders until we got him.
Watch the YouTube clip many a time, mate.
He was electric at the Raiders.
Oh, my goodness. It's an enjoyable watch.
Oh, mate.
Oof.
He was so good. People forget how, he was electric at the Raiders.
Wasn't it? I remember being at a Raiders game back then, and whenever they got a scrum, everyone just went, "Oh fuck, here we go!
Yeah.
He's going to score.
He's going to do something fucking mental here."
And he used to off a scrum. He just used to cut teams.
Weighed about 75 kilos and would bust like 20 tackles a game.
Absolutely
they couldn't touch
wild.
him.
Absolutely wild. His footwork, his strength, low center of gravity.
His acceleration off the mark, he will just
bro.
go. Oh.
Yeah. So good to watch. But yeah, so like if there's anyone that can get this team and have Wayne Bennett is the fairy tale coach. He's the fairy tale coach. Like he just somehow manages to get it done. Look, the thing is, they've got depth in their halves. Sean O'Sullivan, Anthony Milford. Are they good enough to play finals footy? Yeah, on the edges of finals. Like as in, if they both play their best as a Hamiso, a lot of potential. But I do think this roster, as it stands, most likely will not be playing the 8. I don't think they'll win the spoon, but I don't think they'll be playing in the 8.
Yeah, I don't think they're a top 8 side. I don't even think that's their ceiling, to be perfectly honest with you.
You don't need the potential.
If Wayne wasn't
Wayne
the coach,
Bennett
I would
coach.
say definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Wayne is the only thing that makes me second guess that take, but I'm still pretty confident they won't be a top 8 side. Have a look through this squad, and you know what? The best 17, it's not too bad. I think the forward pack is good. I think the bench is good. Like I'm having a look at the bench I've got written down here has got Tom Gilbert, Jared Wallace, and Aiken. That's solid. That's good.
Bloody oath.
But I just think one or two injuries come into this side. The other names that are on this list, it's a big drop off, and it's injuries in key spots. I think Hamiso is the best fullback in the squad. I'm not convinced Hamiso is a fullback, which is a worry for me. You've got Sean O'Sullivan and Anthony Milford, who would be my starting halves, and I think that it could be a little bit counterproductive if Katoa ends up there a little bit too early. So I'm nervous for them, mate.
Timmy?
Yeah, unfortunately, mate, I've got them pegged as wooden spooners.
Wooden spoon.
Mate, it's not the best roster. Let's be fair. So the missing star power, halves are solid, but realistically looking at sort of backup halves, their Milf played a lot of first grade last year. That's a bit harsh, and I know O'Sullivan was behind Luai and Cleary, so I'm possibly being a bit harsh there. But Hammer, as good as he is, realistically, he couldn't crack the 13 at the Cowboys because they were stacked. But I don't know, mate. I'm not overly inspired there. It's the forward pack. 8 to 13 is good, but it's also aging. There's between Kaufusi, Jesse Bromwich, Big Mark Nosey Nichols, there's some old boys in there, so maybe they've got a couple of good years left in them, but I just find it very hard to get excited about it.
It's a forward pack that if they had a superstar 7 or 6, I'd be interested. I think they could get by, but lacking both, and I just look at the starting pack and there's just no punch.
Nothing, hey?
There is there is. I'm looking for a tackle breaker and offload in this side. I can't see one.
I will say, when a few years ago when Wayne was coach of Rabbitohs, much better squad, but his forward pack was, Matty, you can speak better to this, but it was pretty not that solid. That was the concern of the Rabbitohs, is their forward pack was quite, and then all of a sudden these guys just developed into.
And that was my number one concern with that South side, and I sort of wrote them off from being able to win a comp, and that's the one thing that Wayne can do. And I also think, as we spoke about with the Melbourne Storm, I think that getting Kenny Bromwich and Felice Kaufusi, it's a fantastic platform to lay as far as defence goes. But Jesse Bromwich, Mark Nichols, Kenny, Felice, Ray Stone coming off an ACL, that's sort of the starting 13, the starting forward pack. There is just no punch.
Matty?
Just on the Wayne thing that you were speaking about, for anyone just to go back and listen to your interview with Mark Nichols probably a year and a half ago now, a year ago, he was like, Wayne came in, and at the start of the year, he sat down Nichols and I think it was Totola, I'm pretty sure. And by no means were these guys like big names at this point, and just said, I'm putting my trust in you for the first, 3 months or something. And it was a story similar like that. And then they excelled because of Wayne's confidence, the confidence that Wayne put into them. So you'd imagine that, and now Mark Nichols isn't like a crazy superstar, but since then, he's been a mainstay in South's team. He was missed last year when he was missing games. He was great last few years. Totola got South's best player of the year. So you're right. I think Wayne might have to sprinkle a bit of that same magic and put some confidence in these players like he did with those forwards.
Yeah, as I said, best case scenario for them is scraping into the 8, and that's a fairy tale in my opinion. That's we all get on the Dolphins bandwagon, how good these guys are in the 8. But yeah, in reality, I don't see them in the spoon, because I can't see a Wayne Bennett team winning the spoon, but I do see them towards the bottom of the table.
And my concern with the longer term picture as well is, it's their first year in the NRL. It's a building year. In fact, it'll be a couple of building years, but if they're realistically thinking, all right, finals footy and let's be competitive in 2 or 3 years' time, by the time that happens, their whole forward pack will have retired or be very much on the outer by then. It's like...
Well, this is where I couldn't understand why the NRL doesn't help new clubs get set up. Give them a bigger salary cap, or... Because I'm pretty sure the AFL, they allow the clubs coming in, you get a bigger salary cap to lure people in.
And they get really, I believe... I know they used to, I assume they get the same, but when the Giants came in, a couple of the newer clubs and the Suns, real priorities in the drafts and high up in that, all these incentives,
Whereas, the Dolphins were just do your best.
So, the last 5 minutes, I've actually been looking at the AFL kind of setup. And, yes, they do give teams exemptions, draft picks, etc. But even still, we might have got pretty lucky with the Titans, because GWS and Gold Coast did not do anything for the first few years, even with all those exemptions. So now the Dolphins have to come in with, a level playing field. It's going to be tough. I think we might have got lucky with the Titans because their first few years, they missed the finals, but then they made a prelim. That's if the Dolphins do that, that's a fantastic result.
And I think the Titans set a really tough example for the Dolphins. They went 12th, 3rd, 3rd and 4th.
Jeez.
But you have a look at the side that was 3rd and 4th, very similar to the side that was 12th. They were building into it. I think what you're saying about this forward pack, if in 3 or 4 years' time they're playing finals footy, it's going to be a completely different side. And as good as it was at the Titans, finished 3rd and 4th, the year after that they got the spoon, which I think is the reality of a new competition. It's a new team in a competition. It's very difficult.
Footy players, rugby league players at least, They want to live on the Goldie. That's what it is, mate. Beautiful beaches. That unbelievable sand just through the toes. Nice walks with the missus along the beach. Just a beautiful place to live.
Nice country folk.
Nice country folk, exactly.
Surprised you ever saw the beach living in the country.
Country manners. Country manners, mate. All that good stuff. Toughness as well. We got the beauty of the strip clubs, but the toughness of country. It's the perfect place for rugby league. Maybe people go up there and indulge a little bit too much, but that's by the by. But yeah, back to the Dolphins. Look, okay, what's your starting back line then? Would you be going Jennings on one wing?
Yeah, I'd have Hamiso at fullback.
Yeah.
And then I would have Edric Lee on one wing.
Yeah.
Either Jermaine Asako or Jennings on the other wing. Centers, you're probably looking at Gildart from the Roosters, maybe Jennings. My other centre would be the guy that I spoke about last year, Tafade. I think everyone's well aware of him now. I think he could be a good little get for them.
I have a question. Since they've got Kafusi and Bromwich, is Ewan Aiken going to be in the forwards?
I think he has to be sorry to cut you off. I think he has to be at centre because Bromwich and Kafusi should be 80-minute edge back rolls, won't they? So if Ewan Aiken, he's not coming on in the middle.
Yeah.
So he'll have to play centre, won't he?
And they are light in their backs. Like, there's no backs that I'm looking at here and go, oh, shit. Like,
and Ewan Aiken's an awesome centre. I love him there. He's awesome in the back row too because he's such a good footballer. But
I like him at centre.
He strengthens that. That team is strengthened by him starting, surely.
Yeah, I think that you can't afford to have a guy like Ewan Aiken on the bench, even though as a forward he would be on the bench.
Yeah. I actually agree with you, but when I look at the side, I wonder if maybe he could be helpful coming off the bench because
then
at least it gives you a bit of fucking punch.
Yeah.
Where does he come on?
I don't know. I don't know.
What's his preference, do you know?
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think he's happy to play either.
Yeah.
I think Aiken.
Yeah, so the back line is a really interesting one because it's like, a lot of the, Hamiso, we don't know whether there's a fullback yet. Like, maybe he's a fullback. Plenty of potential. The wing positions, I'd probably go Jennings, like Asako sometimes can be a bit up and down. So I don't know. Edric at his best can be great, but he can be up and down.
Even a guy like Gildart, I reckon he'll be there and thereabouts for centre. But at the end of the day, he's been through 2 systems in 6 months, and now he's in a third. So,
is it definitely Milford and O'Sullivan? Like Katoa, we thinking no chance for round one?
I just think it's a lot to put starting a franchise on a guy that hasn't played first grade yet.
Like, imagine how pizzled he'll get.
Yeah.
If he struggles.
And I mean, like he went over with Tonga, and they did well. But I mean, he got picked apart there.
Yeah.
Defensively, he had some, but he really good in attack. Really good in attack. He wasn't actually even supposed to play one game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, and that's what's going to happen with a young guy like that. But
He went over there just as experienced. Was training, and the coach was like, "Far out, this kid's good."
He's an incredible. He could be an absolute star over the next few years, but they just have to manage these 2 years in the right way.
Yeah, for the club long term too. Because what does he sign? Is he on a big deal, like a long term deal till 2025? So yeah, you don't want to be busting him up 2023.
Like, he's obviously super impressive, and he's done that. And it was obviously impressed Christian Wolf enough to say, mate, you're in. He played about in front of Talatau Moan.
Yeah.
So,
in the end,
like, what's to say that he's not going to do the same to Wayne?
Yeah,
just
true.
go, mate, you're a gun.
Like, his attack is fantastic. All these just his defence, but that's all young halves defensively. Take some time.
And he is that sort of like, I know that Wayne sat down on a Zoom with him for 20 minutes and just said, go down to Sydney and get him. Do whatever it takes.
Oh, really?
So he's that sort of character.
Yep. It's exciting, and new clubs coming in for sure. Ray Stone gets to be back on top. Ray Stone and Tom Gilbert, I think they're really good signings. I really do. Not too old or whatever. Obviously, Ray Stone's coming off the ACL, but Gilbert played well at Origin.
Getting Gilbert's a great get.
Yeah.
But once again, I think he's in a similar situation to Aiken for me. I think you have to probably play Gilbert as a middle forward realistically, which he can do, but I sort of prefer him on an edge.
Better suited on the edge, hey.
And that's where if you've got Kenny Bromwich and Felice, you have to play them on the edge. You can't, there's no point having those guys on the bench. So that's where I think maybe
they'll have a really mobile forward pack with, your Ray Stones and Gilberts that are in the middle, a bit smaller, and even Ewan.
That's what I'm sort of leaning towards. Yeah.
And they do kind of like what Roosters do, where they start with the big boppers of Lodge, Hargreaves, and then they bring them off and bring on like Butcher and Watson through the middle.
But once again, if we get to a situation where they lose one front row, whether it be Bromwich, Nichols, Jared Wallace, what happens?
Yeah, then the size on the bench is a bit tough.
Size on the bench is a big worry. If you want to play Ewan Aitken at centre, which I understand where you're both coming from, your bench is fucked. There's nothing.
I wonder
there.
how many like fans they're going to have, the Dolphins. Do you know what I mean?
I'm so intrigued.
I think NRL Physio's a diehard, so
He is a
there's
diehard.
one.
Oh, is he? But was he a diehard of Redcliffe first?
Well, yeah, so that's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to get the Redcliffe guys to come over. That's
Well, I mean, you'd be filthy if you were the Redcliffe guys because you're like, we literally built this club as a community.
Yep.
And we did.
It's I don't have a team, and they're not what they've done off the field so far. It isn't overly appealing to me to support them.
I mean, I don't mind like the media and all that kind of stuff. It's cool, and I like the new club, but it's just like what connects them to a base. You know, like what is gonna.
It would have been great if they would have come along 18 months ago when Brisbane were on their knees. Now that they're starting to rebuild, I don't know.
I think that. Yeah, it's going to be. It's really interesting to see. Like, where are they going to find their base? Like, what is it? Just going to be people that don't like their own team anymore, and then go across to them?
Because, like, respectfully to all these guys, who's the player that a kid's getting a poster off?
Yeah. But it's even like if they did Redcliffe, at least you've got the north of Brisbane and Redcliffe that may not be Broncos fans, and they're like, that's our team. Or they might even be footy fans, but like, oh, that's our team. Whereas like, if you just called the Dolphins, it's like, who do you represent? Like it's an interesting one. Really.
I wonder if they'll ever backflip on that.
They may. They honestly may. Because like I understood. I mean, my thoughts were they did it intentionally because they want to be like seen as a nation. Because Redcliffe's so small, they wanted to be seen like as a nation's brand.
They didn't want to isolate it to just Redcliffe.
Just Redcliffe, exactly, because it's like such a small area. So you're just like, we can only. But what I don't get with that is like, there's plenty of people that don't live in Brisbane or aren't from Brisbane that are Brisbane Broncos fans.
Yeah, and you go from not isolating one area to having nothing.
Yeah.
Aren't you better off having that at least?
Yeah.
Like
And
it's a
getting the
famous
local-
jersey in rugby
Yeah.
league. It's a famous brand, regardless of not being a first grade brand. We all know about it.
And all you need to do is get like 15,000 people to a game, and it'll fill out that stadium. So, whereas like, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Maybe the Redcliffe will get behind them. I hope
Can't
they
wait
do.
to go to a game up there.
That'd be cool. Great little stadium. Great little stadium. So yeah, look, fairy tale stuff. Wayne Bennett sprinkles his magic, and they fight their way into an 8th position. But I got them finishing bottom 4. What do you got, Gurino?
Yeah, bottom 4 for me. I think if they finish outside the bottom 4, that's a really good effort with this squad.
I go Spoon. Sorry,
Timmy,
boys, but
bro,
I'm
just because they're called the Queensland Dolphins doesn't mean you have to hate them.
pretty much the only reason I said Spoon. Yeah, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Wayne does sprinkle his magic.
Yep.
I can't see them winning too many games.
Matty?
Yeah, with the squad, I'd say Spoon, but I'm not going to say it because of Wayne. I reckon bottom 4, and I just hope they don't get the Spoon.
I hope not, because that would be like, that's worst case. Like, I mean, it's worst case they came last, but I mean, a new club in a new tournament, a comp, and you just come last.
Mate, to be honest, I'm more worried about who's going to be the marquee than where they finish this year. I think it's a good year.
Are we
for
going to get
growth.
crazy here, Guru, and say they need to pay someone 1.7 a year? Because we went as high as 1.5. We were like,
Mate, Doro almost fell over when he was sitting here when we were
yeah,
talking
we had
about
Sandro, and I was like,
1.5s.
we were like, we reckon they're going to offer Munster 1.5. It was like, what? No way. And rightly so. It sounds outrageous, but it's like, bro, that's what you're going to have to do to get a bloody big player there.
I really hope they can jag and win in one of those preseason trial things. I want to see what the hype would be if they can just get a win in one of those
And
two
also
games.
how peppered the team that loses gets.
Yeah.
Fuck, poor blokes.
They towel up the Broncos in the preseason.
Oh, no, how dare you, Timmy, you dog. Yeah, so exciting times though. Like I hate to be too negative, but we got to be honest. We can't sugarcoat it. Unfortunately, they're just missing a star or two. But very exciting times, and truly, if there's one team that isn't my team that I want to do well this year, it's honestly the Dolphins, because it's so important for rugby league that they come in and at least win some games and all that kind of stuff. And I think if there's a coach who can do it, it's Wayne. Anything else, boys? Timmy, what do you got going on over the summer?
Mate, I got a bit going on. Don't worry about that. SC Playbook BBL, our cricket content, is fired up for the cricket season. So, new social handle for it: SC Playbook BBL, scplaybook.com.au. Stacks of articles from contributors. The podcast's still going as well. So, if you're into your cricket and your Big Bash in particular, jump onto that. And also the NRL one, SC Playbook NRL, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you could jump on and give that a follow, would be very much appreciated.
What's the Twitter sphere like, boys? Is it
Scary.
Is it a wild west of disgusting
It's a cesspit.
dredge?
Yeah.
Is it?
It's very interactive. Like it's very it's a big community, but it's probably not the nicest community on the planet. There's a few vulgar people. Nah, it's all right, mate.
It's all right?
It's very, very, very journalism based. A lot of good news access.
Yeah.
I suppose.
They love him on there.
Oh, that's
love a
why
bit
he's
of
giving
Timmy.
rap.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah, well, I don't have a personal Instagram. It's all through SC Playbook, but I've got again, being a journo background, I've got the Twitter one. So, mate, me and Elon, we're riding the Twitter bandwagon.
Matty, do you have Twitter?
I have Twitter, and I don't really tweet at all, but I just have it so I can get news kind of before everyone else. That's the big advantage of Twitter. But yeah, it's don't log on to Twitter if you're already having a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I literally I've got an @Denon Kemp, but I've never I do not even interact with it once.
Sometimes I'll upload things, take a screenshot from it, and I upload, and I'm like, get that screenshot and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
not worth it. It's not worth it.
It's the place to be.
I was like,
Get
I
amongst
don't know. It's like I wonder, like, because Bloke's not on there. I wonder how much shit gets talked about Bloke that we don't know about because they're not on there. You know, like if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to see it, did it ever happen? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people.
I'm sure there's tree fallings.
Mate, I'm sure there's a bunch of shit being talking about Bloke. Anyway, that is us, part 2. That is also the last podcast for the day. We're going to do another 4-hour one after this. Last for the year, guys. So make sure to enjoy your Christmas, stay safe, and same with New Year's. Make sure to enjoy it, but stay safe. Don't do anything silly. We'll do things silly, but stay safe. And we will be back on is it the 7th or the 8th? So you've got New Year's on Saturday night. You've got New Year's Day. That Monday, no. But then we'll be back again the following Monday, which I'm pretty sure is the 8th.
It's the 9th of January.
The 9th of January. We will be back rolling into a new season. Hopefully there's a few controversies in rugby league to talk about. No, just joking. We'll be back rolling into a new season. I'm sure there'll be plenty going on, especially after that first week back in. Anything else, boys?
Thanks for a great year, Kempy. It's been unreal.
Been unreal, guys. We're going even bigger next year, baby. As usual, grab a case of Bloke in a Bar, guys. If you've enjoyed this year, the only way we can keep doing this is if you buy the beer or the merch on bloke.shop. And as usual, I'll go and fuck myself. Thank you.